allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for Friday, September 26th at 9 a.m. here in the Community Center. I would remind everybody to please turn off your cell phones. Well, I have a couple things before we get to the consent agenda. I'd like to compliment Allison Lee, our board secretary, on her minutes of the last week. I thought she achieved a really good balance, and I, for one, appreciated the work you put into it, and I think that achieved what we wanted to do. So I thank you for that. On top of that, you cleaned up all of our bad grammar, which was good. So thank you for that. And where's Tennille?
Right here.
Bouquet to you for your efforts on that piece we had in the Highlands today. Very positive on the community, even if they did get most of the quotes wrong. But we appreciate your efforts in that regard. Are you going to talk about the event tomorrow? When he comes? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, we move on to the consent agenda, and I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion from the board? Any discussion from the public? Bring it back to the board.
Supervisor Halbert?
Yes.
Supervisor McCullough?
Yes.
Supervisor Halbig?
Yes.
Supervisor White?
Yes.
President Miller?
Yes. Okay, action agenda. First item is Resolution 2014-9/1226, and a resolution of the Sun Lake Improvement District to establish the levy of operation and maintenance assessments for fiscal year 2015. I need a motion for that, please.
Motion to approve.
Second. Okay.
Okay. Mike, you, Tanya, have...
Mr. Candidate.
Okay.
Attached is a memo in the resolution that I've proposed for the operation and maintenance assessment rates. These rates reflect a 3.75% decrease across all categories. I've given examples in my attachment of the effects of different categories of properties. And for example, a single family home, the rate decrease at 3.75% would be $25.25. And I've also given other examples. I'd like to mention Tanglewood. Their current gross assessment is $244,197, and with a 3.75% decrease, their gross assessment would be $235,000. So the difference is a decrease of $8,791.
What are the estimated collection percentages for?
For unimproved vacant lots, it's only 26%.
Well, I mean, is this what you anticipate collecting?
Well, I don't anticipate collecting it. What I did is in my calculation, I gave you what the gross assessment would be times the percentage collection rate, which is 26%. So I'm looking at only an estimated revenue reduction by $10,793 for that particular category.
Well, I'm just curious because the Tanglewood and the Florida Hospital have a 96%. Does that mean?
That's because they take advantage of the 4% discount.
Oh, okay.
So I use that rate there.
Okay. Board comments?
Yeah, I got some comments. Myself, I changed my position at the last meeting based upon a prior commitment. But we had a lot of discussion about this this trying to reduce the assessment based upon what the county's going to bill. And I commented that I would agree to it if the assessment's reduced in the same proportion that we're paying West Sebring, the county. I think Supervisor Miller said the same thing, is not get stuck on a percentage, and he wanted a reduction that would cause a wash in every category. And really, that's not what happened. You know, after all those discussions, it was push, and then decided that it was going to be a 3.75 reduction across the board. And I think that's wrong. I'm not going to support that at all. I think everybody should. And I think there was some discussion about we can't differentiate, but the county's differentiating when they're billing. So I'll support it if in every category, and I know the county surely has a matrix on the different classifications as what they, so all we have to do is reduce it in the same manner that the county's doing it according to their matrix, but reducing it. And actually, that's based on the payments we've got coming in now. If this thing grows, the more units that are sold, the more lots that are sold, the more that number, that 150 number, and we're using that. We're stuck on the 150 number. We shouldn't be stuck on that. We should be stuck on what West Sebring is going to be billing us. That number is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as time goes on. And to give Tanglewood a $9,000 reduction because it's a percentage. The guy at Tanglewood's not going to give that money back to those people that are paying $15 a unit. There's no way he's going to do it. He's going to put it in his pocket. So I just don't think it's right, in my opinion. So I'm not going to support it based upon the way we calculated it. I know it's been advertised and everything else, and it would have to be advertised again, but that's my stand on it.
Well, obviously, I've always been opposed to it.
That's not on.
It's on now. Okay. I was opposed to giving the rebate back originally, and I still am opposed to it. And I think there's other ways of giving the money back to the people that you promised the money to, instead of doing across the board reduction. I definitely don't agree with that one. But and I did offer some suggestions to the other board members in terms of different ways to do that. And so basically, at this point, I'm still holding my position that we don't give it back in this format for sure.
Well, I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed that after all this time, in all these discussions, and 3 of the board members that are sitting here today agreed upon that we were going to give this money back. And I cannot, in all true consciousness, go back on my word that when we reduced and decided to go to West Sebring Fire Department and we were going to give this money back to our district homeowners and property owners, the money, vote against it. I'm sorry, but those people that want to change this now, I think they're making a big mistake. I think we have a great opportunity here to show the people that we are doing the right thing and we're moving forward in this district.
Larry?
I was against giving it back to begin with also. My opinion of it is, I don't mind giving the 25 back to the household, to the people that have the houses and the lots. The $25 is kind of a wash. The problem is we're giving lots of money back to both the hospital, Tanglewood, Fairway Pines. It's not an even amount. In my opinion, we would still be better off to take a special project. I don't think, and I have not heard a lot of disagreement with over the $25. I have not heard a lot of people complaining, hey, I'm not going to get it back. I've heard a little, but not a lot. $25 isn't going to make a big difference to most people, and I think we can come up with some kind of a project that would help the entire community here, whether it's a beautification project up and down Sun and Lake Boulevard, and use that money for that instead of giving it back. And like I say, most of it's going to go back to commercial buildings. That's my feelings.
Well, let me say one more thing. You know, we promised this to the people. We said we were going to do it, and here we are reneging on our promise. And
Rick, we're not reneging.
Wait a minute, Dave.
Rick, you had your say. So did I.
Wait a minute, Dave. Let me finish.
Go ahead and finish.
Okay. Now, I agree with you that maybe we should take the scale that Highlands County is using for the hospital and the commercial buildings and use that, and use the rest for the private homeowners and the properties. I'll agree with that, but I will not agree with just eliminating this whole project and keeping the money and doing something else with it. We promised this back to the homeowners, and we should do that.
I think what Larry said, he's going to come up with a project to give it back, but not in the... You can't give it back in the unbalanced situation that we got. You just can't. You can't let people... You can't let the commercial guys get more money back than what West Sebring's charging them, and destroying the revenue stream of Sun and Lake. If you had time to work the numbers to see what that multiplier would be over time, it's considerable. It's a lot of money, a whole lot of money. So in the proportion that it was calculated on,
well, let me have my say here. My concern in the first place was not with the residential situation, it was with the commercial and professional situation, because in some cases we were giving a pretty healthy rebate at a time when the charges by West Sebring on these various facilities is minimal. The hospital, for example, is being charged $150 a building, and we're giving back $3,500 or something like that. The second point is that Supervisor McCullough has made a number of points in the memo that he sent to the board, and the one that hit me the most was the fact he differentiated between landowners that were current in their assessment versus landowners that were delinquent. And I think he has a very valid point. So my suggestion, my proposal is that, number one, we give back what we said we were going to give back to the residents, but those residents that are current in their assessment. Okay? And then secondly, we just leave the commercial and the professional alone, because the impact on them is minimal. In this case of Tanglewood, they've got 3 buildings at $150 a piece, and we're giving back $9,000. So that's my suggestion, guys, is that we levy the rebate to all landowners that are current, and we leave the commercial and professional categories alone. So, comments?
Yeah, I got a comment on that. Is that possible in your system to do?
To levy a $25 decrease to only residential properties that are current? Current for, that would mean that they would have no delinquencies whatsoever going into the billing cycle for 2014? Is that what you meant by current? So going...
Let you calculate that, the timing on that.
I can come up with those properties that are current without any delinquencies. It's just a manual process. I mean, we would have to weed out those that are current against those that are not current, and only those that are current would receive a $25 discount.
Okay. Well, what I'm asking is, will that
it is
go
possible.
through your computer system that is feasible without taking 80 hours of your time to do it?
It could take about 80 hours. I mean, it is we can do it, absolutely. It's going to be a manual process. We'd have to go into all the properties that would receive a discount individually and make sure they do. And it is possible, yes.
Would you reduce? You can't reduce this thing on again? No. I got that.
Mr. McClure, is that legal while he's getting his?
Frankly, in my opinion, no. And I'll just lay it out for you. My concern here is you're in uncharted territory. You have no study whatsoever to back up what we're doing. I think it would be fairly clean to reduce the assessment with what West Sebring is charging versus what we're charging for the fire. But frankly, to say, well, I want to apply this to a special project, I want to do this, I want to do that, when it's a fire assessment you're reducing, but you want to apply it to a special project, I have grave concerns about that. Our assessment methodology study is many years old. You rejected the last one that was submitted to you, and so I'm not saying it was the model of acceptance. I'm not trying to say that, but I am saying that you really ought to be concerned as a board about being able to support legally the basis for your assessments, which are directly related as a district to benefits. I appreciate the comments regarding the county matrix, but remember, all of that is predicated on an ad valorem assessment, not a benefit assessment. We're a benefit district, not ad valorem district. So you have to weigh what you're doing against what the benefits are. And fire protection is a direct benefit, one of our primary benefits at one time. So I just think you need to be careful here. I am very nervous listening to this discussion.
One of the suggestions I had in terms of paying back the residents was to offer the residents a $25 credit on their water bill. That way you're basically taking the $25 firehouse rebate, if you want to call it that, and basically applying it to the water bill. So
I understand fully what you're saying, sir.
Yeah.
But if you've listened to what you just said, you're not relating what you're doing to a benefit analysis.
Well,
that is mandatory.
It's a financial wash, really, is what we're trying to do.
I appreciate your analysis. Again, I said I understand logically financial wash sounds great, but I'm just telling you, when you get up in front of the judge, it's going to be about benefits.
And who would bring it to the judge? Who would that be?
Well, I'll let you guys figure that out, not me.
I mean, if all these people are getting $25 back,
it's only a one-time deal.
Well, I would suggest to you this. My concern about not changing commercial but changing residential opens you up directly to a charge of discrimination. Okay? And if you want to know who would bring that suit, I believe it's a group called Tanglewood.
No. The other part of that was to pay back the commercial people exactly what the county is going to charge them. So
Well,
so the hospital would get a $600 credit, Tanglewood would get a $450 credit on their water bill.
Well, keep in mind, Tanglewood's going to pay roughly twice what they're currently, twice the amount of the discount that they would get from us, they're going to pay to the county. They're going to pay well over $15,000 for fire protection.
16
The individuals in Tanglewood, not
They bill
Tanglewood.
the property owner.
The individual property owners will pay that, but Hometown America won't bill it, based upon how they're billed. I don't know how it's going to be billed. I imagine it's going to be billed like the license.
Pass through.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But Hometown America is a single owner of all of it, so that's what he was saying. Is Hometown America will receive the bill, and how they allocate it amongst their tenants, and I'm sure they would, I guess is their issue.
Yeah, we did talk to the county
I doubt
about
it, but-
Tanglewood.
Have we checked to see how that's going to be billed?
We are estimating Tanglewood is going to be billed $16,650. That's $15 for 1,080 units and $150 for 3 buildings. They are not going to be billed on their RV lots based on ordinance. So this is the estimate we have from the county, $16,650.
Yeah, but how are they going to bill that? Are they going to send a $16,000 bill to Hometown America?
They have to, sir,
Yes.
because it's always billed with the property tax assessment bill.
Yeah.
And that is by ownership. So there's no other way for them to directly bill a tenant for this type of assessment. It's always billed with the property ownership ad valorem taxes.
They can't, John, they can't add that to the tag that the units buy for their window?
Say that again, please.
Okay, on a modular home.
By the registration?
You buy a registration every year for.
Well, the registration, please understand this, the registration of mobile home can be taxed as real property if the home on which the property on which the home is located is owned by the homeowner, by the mobile homeowner. This is not. This is rented. You rent the lots. It's a property ownership assessment. You can't even get an RP sticker in Tanglewood. They don't do that because they don't own the property.
Well, financially speaking, we're better off to give Tanglewood $16,000 and give the residents $25 or still. It's fair to everybody, and we're just not giving money away.
It's concerning that we're on the eve of potential adoption of this assessment, and there's still a great deal of disagreement amongst the board apparently about how the assessment will be levied and against whom and in what amounts.
Well, I guess can we take the conversation?
This exasperates the position thing we're going to talk about. You know, I mean, this whole thing is a special situation that needs to be looked at, and we'll talk about that later. But
I don't think we never apologize for having a discussion on this, John. I don't know what your point is.
No, I'm not. That's not.
Well,
my
we
point.
have differing views, and you just threw a monkey wrench in the whole thing when you said we couldn't differentiate.
Well, first,
we're back to square one, I guess.
well, if you take the conversation away from assessment, you just leave the assessments alone. To me, it's a different conversation, a different project, a different objective.
That cleans it up. Cleans it up.
It's not an assessment
Right there.
adjustment.
That just cleans it up. Just go right back where we were, because it's confusing. There's no way to make sure the homeowners or the mobile homeowners or the residential people get back what they're billed unless we just don't do it. You know.
I'd like to make this position clear because I think I need to say this. Typically, your assessments are driven by your budget requirements. I think we all agree with that statement, right? And so what I'm suggesting is, I'm not saying you shouldn't raise the assessment. I'm not saying you should lower the assessment by the amount of the fire thing. What you should do is levy an assessment based on your monetary requirements, based on your budget. It should not be directly related to anything. You have transferred your fire obligations to West Sebring. They are separately assessing the properties, period, okay? So what you should be doing is now, in my opinion, to directly relate that to what we're doing is a mistake I think you just need to look at, okay, now the fire's gone, what is our budget? Let's assess our properties based on our budgetary requirements in accordance with the methodology we have used in years past.
But John, the position of some of the supervisors is that by doing that across the board, we're penalizing ourselves from a financial basis. Tanya's position, and you might want to speak up on this, is the fact that this reduction does provide a wash, but some of the guys here don't see it that way.
When you look at it from a budget perspective, the fire department is gone, okay, and that budget ranged about $150,000 a year. So this decrease does provide a wash per se, because that department is no longer in the budget.
I don't agree with that.
Well, this has gotten to the point where we're not going to resolve this in the next
wait a minute.
meetings.
One of the things I might
Let me
add to you.
Let me say something. Whether we do nothing or this thing keeps going off. Whether we do nothing or not, you know, it's off again.
See if you can figure out what's wrong.
This is off.
Gary, see if you can figure out what's going
You
on
know,
with the mics.
what's happening? What's happening if we leave everything the way it is? Tanglewood is still going to get socked with $16,000 assessment. The hospital is going to get socked. All the commercial properties are going to get socked. And all our homeowners are going to get $25 increase.
No, the hospital's not going to get socked because the assessment is on buildings, and they only own 4 buildings.
Yeah. Well, they're going to get an increase.
$600 bucks.
Because we're not going to decrease ours. We're not going to decrease ours, right? So everybody's going to get an increase.
Absolutely.
Because we're not going to do anything.
All right, I'm going to say it one more time. If we give everybody a $25 credit on their water bill, you take care of all the residents, everybody is whole there, you give all the commercial people a rebate based on their water bill, based on whatever the county's going to bill them, so the hospital gets billed $600, and you give Tanglewood a $16,000 credit on their water bill, everybody breaks even. Simple as that.
I'd like to mention, though, that we do have a lot of tenants in the district, and when you give a credit on the water bill is in the name of the tenant, not in the name of the owner. So the owner would not even receive the credit in that case.
You're still better off. Yeah, you are.
John, did you say that would not work?
You must know who's renting and who's not, right?
Yeah, that gets complicated. Come on. David, any other comments? Let's hear from the public, and then we'll bring it back to the board, because we're not getting anywhere. Any public comments?
My name is Rex Vaughn. I live in Sun and Lake.
It is.
Hello there. How about that? It's good to have an engineer with you. We rehearsed that pretty good, didn't we? I've been confused for years, but every time I come to a board meeting now, I get more confused. But it's one thing today and something tomorrow. Now, I don't believe that we need to mess with the rates. If we need the money, that's one thing. But we come to a meeting and we boast about all the money we have. We come to the next meeting and we try to prove to you that we are very, very poor and we need to increase the rates. I don't know what's going to happen with the fire department, West Sebring Fire Department, because we don't have to worry about the fire department now because we don't have one. Now, who's going to fund our fire department? The county can't. We offered a service, and we decided we didn't need it, so we gave it away. And the county just can't parade in here and assess us because we don't have a fire department. A lot is said in the Florida law, by the way. Our lawyer went to the bathroom, so I might as well go ahead. It says this section shall not be construed to authorize the county to increase any service charge or special assessment or to levy any tax within the municipality or special district, nor shall this section be construed to authorize the creation of a municipal service taxing unit within such area. Well, we have been, our boundaries, so to speak, now is serviced by West Sebring Fire Department. And where are they getting part of their money? They're getting it from us. We're being assessed. If you read the newspaper, and they've got the print in that so small you can't, kind of reminds me of our minutes. You get it so small that you can't read it. But anyhow, that's where their money is coming from to service us. They advertised it in the newspaper. County Commission went along with it. And the West Sebring, you've probably already gotten a notice saying that you will be getting a bill or an item on your normal tax bill from the county. Well, that's a courtesy bill, and I say courtesy, we have to pay for whatever they feel it costs them. So I don't know where we're going. There's a way to do it, but we need to take our time. All of the big stuff, we just handle it immediately. The little piddly stuff, we spend hours, 60 pages, 100 pages of minutes on the normal operation of the district. So don't rush. And if you are going to approve any type of increase in assessments in this district and any time in the future, put a cap on it. There's no cap on a limit that you folks can sit there, and I'm not being critical of you, but I'm just trying to tell you that you can assess these folks out here anything you want to. You have to have some backup, of course, but there is no limit. So we need to be careful on how easy or how tough it is to increase or decrease the assessments in the district. So there's a limitation as to what the county can assess us. If we're already offering a service, they can't come in and double over and charge us. Thank you so much.
Okay. Back to the board.
One more comment. I took the gross assessments, current gross assessments that you had, multiply them by the collection percentage. When you get done with that, that comes out $2,584,000. If I didn't make a mistake in it, and I don't think I did. If I take the proposed gross assessments and multiply that again by the percentages, it comes out $2,487,000. So basically we lose 60, 70, not quite $80,000 is what we're losing.
Based on the examples that I gave you, there's a couple other categories I didn't include in here. I didn't include all categories, but we're looking at an estimated $150,000 when you include all the categories. What I've given here are just examples of certain categories. Okay. But that's correct. Those calculations are correct.
John, one more question for you. What I'm hearing from you to keep from paying our attorney or his sidekick, somebody, to keep us out of trouble, we basically have to turn the money back some form or another, correct?
Well, that's not what I said.
No.
I'd like to be clear about that.
Percentage-wise, okay.
What I'm suggesting is this, that and I'm staying by what I told you, which is your budget should be set on your budgetary needs versus your benefits you're providing. And that's how you derive an assessment. The methodology that we have is old, but it's still working. People seem to be accustomed to it, and so we're levying it that way. Okay? If we ever are challenged on that, I think we would have a difficult time perhaps locating an expert to defend us, but whether Mr. Burton would or not at this point, I couldn't say. But as to we're going to get sued for sure if we deviate from this, no, I never said that. I think what I'm saying is to be defensible, if we ever are sued, we need to have a defensible methodology. That's all I'm saying.
Well, John,
That's what I meant.
John, your question when you said that we're reducing it or increasing it according to the budgetary needs, we have a savings of $150,000 because we aren't paying for our in-house fire services.
Correct.
And what we're trying to do is pass those savings on to our residents. And where does that conflict with the statement you made that we are raising or lowering assessments in response to budgetary needs? To me, that's defensible. I think your
statement, the concern I have is this, sir. When we levy our assessments, we don't just levy on residents. We levy on commercial properties as well. So when you levy on a commercial property, they're receiving a benefit from the fire service. That benefit is being modified through the West Sebring Fire Department and their assessments. So when we only look at our residents, to me, the concern I have about that is discrimination. Because you've got commercial property owners that are being assessed but not receiving benefit. You're only benefiting the residential property owners.
Yeah, but when Supervisor Halbeck makes the point, let's just go down category by category and even this out, you say we can't do it, yet you're distinguishing yourself in your argument between commercial and residential. We have something like, what, Tanya, 27 different assessment categories? And
yes.
We make decisions on each one of those categories. So we differentiate. Why can't we do it here in terms of changing the assessment? I don't understand why that is different from what we do every year.
I think the answer is, it is what I would call an arbitrary decision on your part, because you're saying, well, let's move from here to put over there. You don't have an assessment basis to back that up.
Well, where's the assessment basis for our yearly... It's just precedent. That's all it is.
That, sir, is a good statement, and that's one of my biggest concerns. I'll just be right up front.
That's why we had the assessment study, and you saw how that went.
I saw that assessment study. Yes, I did.
Well,
I understand your concerns about that.
Do you understand that we're trying to give people a rebate? That we're not just accepting the fact that there's an additional charge to them from West Sebring, and it seems like every place we turn or try to go, you're telling us we can't do it. There must be a way that these people can get some relief.
Well, I respectfully must disagree with your last statement, but I am very much trying to make sure this board doesn't just jump off and do something without me saying anything.
I don't think we're jumping off. We've been chewing on this thing now for 6 weeks or 2 months. Do you see any way that we can get to where we want to go?
Here's where we're at today. Let's talk about that first. We have advertised rates. We have a resolution. It's before the board for your consideration for adoption of these rates, as you must do every year. Apparently, we're not in agreement about what those rates should be today. Okay, so some rate needs to be developed that is acceptable to the board, and however you do that, I think you're going to need a special workshop to do that. Develop whatever rates you feel are appropriate, advertise those rates, then come back. The property owners are relying upon the advertised rate.
Let me ask you one question. Do you have a problem with my proposal from the standpoint that we rebate for those landowners that are current in their payments?
I absolutely do, and the reason for that is it's not related to benefits provided to all property owners.
So at least we've got that
I'd say that would not pass muster for sure.
Would not?
Would not. That's discrimination based on who's a good player and who isn't.
We cut off their water for non-payment.
That's a user fee, sir. That's not a benefit based on
John, work with us here, please.
Sir, I'm trying my best, believe me. I am.
Keeping you out of jail.
Not
Supervisor
me, us.
Halbig's suggestion, maybe I don't understand it fully. If you could explain that again, sir?
Dave, your suggestion on category by category.
I suggested that we use the same matrix that the county uses by classification and reduce those accordingly based upon that matrix. That makes everybody whole, and except for Tanglewood. Now, Tanglewood in the Burton study, I'm not too sure that a lot of those costs were in that, because they looked at that as a unimproved acre. They didn't go through any mentality about all those residential people over there that are going to get a $15 bill, but their equivalent benefit unit ratio was 1/3 of what an improved lot is. So I don't think the Burton study originally, because remember we ended up in a lawsuit where they had to try to triple 1 acre into 3,
Yes.
all right, because they knew there was a problem, and we ended up in a lawsuit. But now we got a situation where all these individual people are going to have a $15 bill, or Hometown America is going to be, and so I think that's there again. That needs to be looked at separately, and we figure out. I mean, why couldn't we use that matrix and reduce it in the same manner? That way, everybody gets whole. But I still think Tanglewood's a separate dog that needs to be trained or looked at, and we'll talk about that later. I don't think a lot of those costs were even included in the Burton study as far as fire and administration and security and all that stuff. They looked at it as a piece of dirt with nobody living on the daggone thing.
And that may well be.
I guarantee it is.
Yeah.
You know.
So, again, I get back to my point. We have, for today, we've advertised rates that apparently are not acceptable to the board, and you want to go back and look at them again. So, that being the case, my recommendation would be just schedule a special meeting to review these things. Perhaps, I don't know, sir, if a methodology has been applied by district staff with your methodology to see what revenues that would generate or not, which would be a requirement, of course, for any adoption. But that's something that could be at least considered at the special meeting. But if you're not in agreement with what is before you now that's been advertised, which I believe was approved at the last meeting to advertise.
But they're still going to have some direction as to how to proceed for this workshop or whatever this special meeting is.
Well, I do not wish. I'm your legal counsel. I'm not your methodology developer, okay? And I don't want to be in that position. So the bottom line is the board has to adopt assessments based on what you determine to be an appropriate methodology. I believe that I have given you what I think are the legal requirements today. And so wherever we go from here or next is up to you.
Okay, one more comment.
Okay, you didn't really tell me if my idea of the water bill was good or bad, other than the renter, so I want to hear that legally from you as well.
Bad.
Okay.
And the reason for that, sir, is you're taking a user fee,
right,
which is assessed based on user charges, and you want to morph and mix that with a benefit assessment methodology, which is what the O&M assessment is based on. They're two separate, totally separate, different things.
Well, I understand that part.
Cross-pollinate.
That part I understand, but it was just a way of showing the resident he's getting $25 back to balance out the increase on his tax bill. The other thing, you made a comment that our budget is based on need, and I didn't want to dispute that. I think our budget is based on revenue. In other words, whatever our revenue stream is,
Revenue requirements, I agree, which I construe as need. Now, need can
but
be
our need
defined in many different ways. I agree.
I mean, I can come up with a $2 million more need, but we can't obviously do it because we don't have the revenue. So
the political process is what levels the playing field there. By that I mean, if you impose too high of assessment, you're no longer a supervisor, and somebody else comes in behind you, and they can reduce the assessment.
All right. One other idea. If we gave the resident more services for the same assessment fee, would that fly?
If it increases your budgetary requirements and the assessment is justified through the budgetary requirements, the answer is yes.
It would increase our costs.
Clearly it would.
Okay.
Now, let me say one thing.
Hey, quickly, please. We're going to get to the vote. Go ahead.
You're talking about the water, and Tanya brought it up. Some of these homes are rented, and the person paying the water bill is the tenant.
Well,
it's not the homeowner who pays the taxes.
It doesn't matter anymore.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't, because you already said we can't do it. So
I understand
your
that.
point.
So the second thing that you brought up was giving people a benefit still doesn't wash because they're tenants. They're not homeowners.
Well, look, we're going to have to cut this off.
I'm just going to say that point wasn't for the renters. It was for the
homeowners. We have a
homeowners.
resolution on the table. Tanya, you say that your procedure on your across-the-board reductions gives us a wash. That's your position. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So we're voting on that particular one that was advertised. Allison?
Supervisor McCullough?
No.
Supervisor Halbig?
No.
Supervisor White?
No.
Supervisor Hulbert?
Yes.
President Miller?
Yes. So that's defeated, and I guess we regroup. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir. I would make one final comment, if I may. Maybe I should have said this before the vote, but I'll say it now. Remember, this is an annual assessment. You can revisit every year. If you are unhappy with the way it turns out this year, you can always revisit it next year. Certainly the budget as proposed would not jeopardize any district operations that I'm aware of. And that's all I'll say about that. But remember, you are going to have at this point a special meeting, re-advertisement, and hopefully arrive at some methodology that suits everyone.
Tell them the timelines.
And don't forget, the district has to mail out its billing. When is that due, Mr.
Well,
Wright?
it's November, but what I'm talking about is if you advertise a different rate, what is that, 10 days?
10 days for user fees, yes.
Okay. What about assessment?
This is not a user fee. This is an assessment.
Well, from my standpoint, listening to all this back and forth, different opinions, the only feasible alternative we have in the near future is to go back and reapprove or approve our last year's rates. So I'm suggesting that the next resolution, can we meet all of our obligations, Mike, by considering this resolution at the next meeting before any mailings and so forth, or do we need a special meeting?
I think we can. If what you're talking about is simply adopting the same rate structure we have,
well, that's the only fallback position we have.
Then yes, we can do that.
Can we do that today? Good point.
John?
If this motion has been defeated. This is the only thing that's been advertised. You cannot today now re-adopt the rates you've imposed last year without re-advertising the intention to advertise those rates. What you can do today, and I'll just, for whatever it's worth, any member of the prevailing party, which was the party that defeated the resolution, can move for reconsideration of the vote. Nobody who prevailed can move, but only a member of the non-prevailing party can move for reconsideration of the vote, and then you could take another vote if you want to do that. But
who is the non-prevailing party?
3 noes.
The 2 noes. The prevailing party are the 3 noes. The non-prevailing party are the 2 yeas.
And we're the only ones can reopen it?
No. I'm sorry. I misspoke. I had it backwards. The members of the prevailing vote, which was the negative vote.
Yeah.
It'd have to be one of those members that would move for reconsideration.
Okay. Well, look, the thing we need to do is for the next meeting, we better have our act together and decide what we're going to approve. So I don't see the way things have been going today. I don't see any way that we're going to come to grips with a new methodology before the next meeting. My suggestion is that and can I do this? I'm not proposing anything, I'm just suggesting that it comes back to the board next meeting with the last year's assessments.
You can do that. You can certainly do that.
Okay, well, that's what I'm suggesting.
Now, I would recommend, sir, if that's your suggestion, that you call for a vote of the board that they are in consensus with that so it can be advertised.
Now, that's fair enough.
And then that $150,000 goes into contingency this year.
Or wherever you want to put
Right?
it.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a consensus to do this?
No, yeah. Basically what you're saying, we're going to reestablish our current rate. Is that what we're doing?
I don't
That was
see
what
any other way
suggested.
to look at it.
If that's what you're going to do, somebody needs to make a motion second, and then the usual discussion, public input.
I'll make a motion, we re-advertise based upon last year's assessment rates, and then bring it back for adopting the budget at the next meeting.
Second it.
Okay. Board discussion? Public discussion?
It's okay. Larry Bertetto. Where was the discussion of all this in July and August? Why are we waiting 3 weeks, 2 weeks before it has to go, and it's just now all coming up?
No, we've been chewing over this for at least one other, maybe 3 meetings, I guess. It's not new. But we just have different opinions, Larry, and it's kicking the can down the road, but that's the way it is right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to tell you, I received a notice that all special districts will follow state law. So just keep in mind you follow state law.
Okay. Bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? This is, what, a vote? I guess to bring back last year's assessment rates.
Supervisor Halbert?
No.
Supervisor McCullough?
Yes.
Supervisor Halbig?
Yes.
Supervisor White?
Yeah, I understand.
Mr. President, I hate to interrupt here. Before we complete the vote, may I make a comment, sir? And I was clarifying this with Tanya so I didn't get a chance to vote until now, to talk to you now. But you're about to adopt a budget, okay? The budget you adopt is in part directly related to these assessments. And, okay, the tentative budget, my apologies. So your tentative budget, I thought, was in consonance with the proposed assessment. Now, if we're saying we're going to increase the assessment, which apparently we are, I don't see any proposed budget.
Well, first of all, we're not increasing the assessment. We are adopting the same assessments we had before, and the impact on the budget is minimal.
But you are increasing the assessment from what was proposed, which is based on this proposed budget. You are doing that. That's my point. I realize you're not increasing assessments from last year. You're increasing assessments that were derived based on this budget that you're considering.
Well,
Supervisors, I'm just trying to point out to you that is an issue.
We never voted, John, we never voted on this budget.
You haven't voted on the budget yet. I agree. I'm trying to point out to you that that's where you're headed next. And so if it's a $150,000 difference in a $2.5 million budget, Supervisor McCullough has already indicated there may be another project he had that would offset through this, and maybe the final budget would reflect that. I'm just pointing out to you that they need to be together. Okay, that's all.
Comments accepted. Thank you. Larry?
John, you mentioned something a minute ago before I vote. If I vote no here, and wait a minute, let me come back on it. the original thing, I can come back and change my mind on. Is that correct? You said a minute ago?
That you could do that. Then you're in the middle of a vote for something else right now.
I understand that.
Which is to increase. Yes, that's what I said. You would have been in the prevailing party, and you can move for reconsideration to change things around, to readopt the initial proposal, if that is your desire.
Well, by changing it back to what we have in front of us, we are doing away with the benefit, as I understand it.
Say again?
For the time being, we're doing away with the benefit, correct?
Doing away with the benefit.
Benefit of the fire department.
Well, the prior budgetary proposal was based on the loss of the fire department, and the reduction in assessments was based on the amount of the assessment in large part by the Sebring Fire Department, yes. So by adopting this budget, essentially, by adopting the motion before the board now, you would be voting to advertise an increased rate based on last year's assessment. It's not increasing last year, it's just increasing the proposed assessment this year, that's all. You're readopting last year's, which was inclusive of the fire assessment.
That's what you get the big bucks for. That's what you get the big bucks for.
That's exactly right. I think we're losing a lot of time here, and this is a one-year deal.
We got to vote on that.
And I'm voting no then.
All right, my vote is yes. It carries 3-2.
That's a 3-2. It carries.
Thank you. Okay, next item.
I got a question about advertising.
3 minutes, 3:50. Going back to advertising the last year's
right.
assessment. That's exactly what it is. Where were you?
You're talking about advertising. Let me ask a question that I probably ought to know. Should that have been advertised before we agreed to this budget? Did we advertise sooner than we should have? Just a question.
No, you have to advertise to have something for the public to come in and participate
prior
in
to
the
adopting
absolutely.
Okay.
How else would they know if you didn't do that?
I got you.
All right. Next item, Resolution 2014-09-1224, Resolution Sun and Lake Sebring Improvement District to adopt the golf course fees for fiscal year 2015. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay. Board discussion?
The only thing I'd like to say is I mentioned it before, and I mentioned it to Mr. Ford earlier this week, that the member guest rate in the November column is supposed to equal or be less than any other advertised rate, and it's still $31 compared to $30.
I was going to bring that up too. The residential rate's the same. It's $31 as well as
David Ford, Sun and Lake Golf Club. That was a mistake on this rate sheet. Kurt pointed that out, and I have since changed that. I gave that to Tanya, so the rates now for the member guest rate would be 30, and there was also a mistake over in the May column. That member guest rate would now go to 21.
Does that affect this resolution?
We can still do that. John?
Can we mark our copies?
Is it all less than everything's less?
We'll just mark our copies.
Okay.
Yeah, it's less than all of it.
If the rates to be adopted are always less than what was advertised, you can do that. Right. You cannot increase what was advertised. So
okay.
So we're okay.
Yeah.
No, he was going to increase this one.
No, that's already been. That's set, that hasn't been changed. He's talking about changes.
No, he just said he'd increase that $1.
David,
To 21.
Is that an increase as of today?
Yes, the May is to 21.
That's what you cannot do.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So this is deferred, right?
Sir?
This has to be deferred, or can we have a new resolution?
Well, you could adopt everything but that rate and then come back and re-advertise that rate if you want to adopt that rate later, or you can just do it all at once. They could
Newspaper costs more.
be a lot less money to advertise just that one rate.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, we've got a motion to adopt what's presented, so we need to modify the motion, John?
Yes.
Amend?
The motion needs to be amended
Where are we
to,
increasing?
somebody needs to move to amend
The last
to,
one on the bottom, it's $20. It should be $21 to match the hotel rate.
Oh, okay.
the motion to amend would be to remove that one fee to be adopted and to adopt all other fees with the exception of that one.
That requires a separate motion?
It requires an amendment to the motion on the floor.
Okay.
And then you'll vote on the amendment, and then you'll vote on the motion as amended.
Can we just leave it? Can we just leave it $20? Can we just leave it $20 and reduce the 31 in residential and member guest and clean it up without going through all this motion change
that's right.
stuff?
That would be good.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we still have to do an
That
amendment?
makes more sense, I think.
All right.
Okay?
Yes.
So you're not increasing any category by
No,
that recommendation.
Yeah, we'll proceed on that basis then. Okay, any other board comments? Public comments?
Wait, I think you need an amended motion to reduce that.
No.
Well, what he's saying is this, that if you're going to reduce a category other than what was advertised, because the motion has been to adopt what is here.
Right.
So what Mr. Wright is saying, if you're reducing a category, you do still need
Okay, good point.
an
Good
amendment.
point.
That's why I asked, can we just mark these, since it was already corrected prior to the meeting, can we just mark these as a typo and
Not
proceed?
as a typo?
Well, you said it was a typo, basically.
It was a mistake, but it was advertised incorrectly.
If it's been advertised, it's been advertised. You're
It's been
bound by that.
Okay.
All righty, so you need an amended motion, right?
You need a motion to amend the motion.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to amend the hotel rates, the golf rates for the member guest on the month of November from $31 to $30.
Did that cover it?
Need a second on it.
Need a second?
Second that? No.
Okay.
Then you vote on the amendment, and then after the amendment is passed, assuming it will, then you vote on the motion as amended as a separate vote.
Okay.
And you need public input in both of these.
Everybody got that?
Yep.
Okay, bring it back to the board. No public comment, I guess. There is public comment? I have a question. Rusty.
Rusty Carino, resident. How about the rate? I haven't seen your rate for residents versus a hotel guest.
They are, in November, a hotel guest is 30, a resident is 30.
So a hotel guest is getting more of a privilege than a
For
resident.
the rest of the year, it's the same.
Okay, but still, well, we just make it the same for the residents, because it seems like the residents are footing. I think they had a transfer of $587,000 from general fund. Why don't they just make it the same over that? My other question is, I'd like to know is how many single memberships do you have that are residents? Do you know that?
I don't know the exact number, but the majority of our members are residents. We have very few that are outside the district. I don't know the exact number, no, sir.
Well, for families, do you know that number of families that are residents here?
Most of the heavy majority are going to be residents of the district. There are going to be very few that come from outside Sun and Lake.
Can I get that from you?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Tom Costy, resident. This pretty much goes along with what Rusty is saying. I noticed that residents are paying in one or two of those categories more than hotel guests are paying. And it's only in, I think, the summer period, if I remember correctly. Normally, the residents are paying either at the same level as the hotel guests or under. And keep in mind that the residents, and I think the transfer from the general fund to the golf operation, including everything, is closer to $1 million than it is to $500,000. So a significant portion of the tax money or the assessment money that the residents pay is going to golf. And yet they're being expected, I don't think they should be expected in any case to pay $1 more than a hotel guest is going to pay.
Well, we've had that as a policy.
Pardon me?
We have had that as a policy. It's consistent.
I think it's incorrect. I mean, if you want to sign on to it, that's your prerogative. That's your choice.
Your point is well taken.
Thank you.
Refer to David.
That is when the rates were put together. I will, that's my mistake. Did not realize that there was a policy like that, and it's easy enough. We can make that change. So we can reduce the resident rate by the $1 in November, and we can also reduce the resident rate by $1 in the summer.
John, again, reductions are okay?
Reductions are okay, sir, but we will need to amend
another motion to amend.
Yes, sir.
This is getting to be real fun. All right.
For me too.
Kurt,
I did the last one. Your turn.
Not my turn. I'm the moderator.
Let's have this.
I'd like to make a.
Let's do this. Why don't we have whoever seconded that motion withdraw their second, your amendment, and you withdraw the amendment and repropose a second amendment, which includes both reductions.
I think I second that, and I'll withdraw it.
Okay. I withdraw my proposal.
New amendment now.
I'd like to propose a amended to the golf rates for the residents in November and May to be reduced by $1 each, and also the member guest rate in November to be reduced by $1.
Second?
I'll second that.
All right. Board discussion? Public discussion. Back to the board. Allison, call the roll, please.
Supervisor Halbig?
Yes.
Supervisor White?
Yes.
Supervisor Hulbert?
Yes.
Supervisor McCullough?
Yes.
President Miller?
Yes. Okay, item C. David, don't go. Item C in the action agenda is the GPS unit discussion. And I assume that, David, you're going to introduce this topic.
At the last meeting, we discussed the GPS units with the golf carts. We were able to get new golf carts, and then the GPS discussion was pushed to this meeting to allow us to do a little bit more research on it.
Mr. President, I apologize. All we've done so far is vote on the amendment. We still have to vote on the motion as amended. That we didn't get to that yet. Remember the two votes. One was on the. Don't look at me. I've explained that twice already. Okay, so we've amended the base motion. Now we need to vote on the motion as amended.
David,
then we'll get to this item.
Go ahead. So we have a vote.
Right.
We have it on the table.
We have it on the table. The motion's been amended. Now you need to call for the vote on the motion as amended.
We need to what?
You need to call for the vote on the motion as amended. Before you do that, you need public input. I didn't make the rules, just telling you the rules.
All right. Do we have any board discussion on that? Do we have any public discussion? Bring it back to the board. Allison?
Supervisor.
Comment, Larry?
No.
Okay.
Supervisor White?
Yes.
Supervisor Hulbert?
Yes.
Supervisor McCullough?
Yes.
Supervisor Halbig?
Yes.
President Miller?
Yes.
Thank you, sorry.
golf rates are adopted.
Okay, thank you. So basically, to discuss a little bit more about the GPS, I thought I would break it down a little bit more for all the board members. Basically, there's three options with the GPS. The three options being the control unit, which was the original reason that the golf operations had brought this to the board. The control option giving our golf operations an opportunity to track our golf carts on the golf course, prevent them from going in certain areas on the golf course, and then also letting us ensure that we have the proper rotation and the proper maintenance practices on our golf carts. The second option is having the control unit plus a text unit, which is a small box which gives yardage to the greens, front, middle, back, and then it gives us the ability to send a text message to the cart if they get in the wrong place or anything else that we'd like to send them. And that unit is... Let me go back to the first unit. The first unit's $52,000. It is basically $479 a unit for the 96 golf carts, and that's just for control, just the control unit. If you add the text unit, it's an additional $149 per cart, which would be $67,000 for the tag unit, and then we'd also track utility vehicles on the golf course, and that would be an additional $4,700. So the overall price for the text unit is $71,000. Now, they have a big system, which most of everyone who's played golf at a course that has GPS is used to seeing the big system with the screen and showing the yardage of the golf course and stuff like that. That is more expensive. It's $1,600 a unit. It's $163,000 for the entire fleet to be outfitted with the touch unit. What I've done is just to break down the difference, I went out and tried to solicit advertising on these units. I was able to secure 3 companies that are willing to advertise on the GPS unit. I got Betsy Shepard from Ridge Real Estate's willing to give us $5,000 next year to advertise on it. Chen Dental is willing to commit to doing advertising as well, Dusty Johnson with Johnson Wealth Management, he is willing to also advertise. The other people that I went to were not interested, but in sales, I think everybody knows as you're going out selling, sometimes you get yes, sometimes you get no. But I haven't had an opportunity to go out and see everyone and really kind of beat the streets on it. But I feel like after the week that I spent kind of on the road talking with people here in town, that there would be some viability to the advertising part of it. Now, I will say the advertising part of it's for the year. 1 year, it's a 1-year commitment. After that, hopefully they see a benefit from it. If they don't, we may lose that. So, I said all of that to say this. I think basically, my recommendation to the board originally was to go with the text unit. Again, I go back to the reason that the golf operation brought this to the board was so that we could track our golf carts out on the golf course. One of the biggest complaints that we get from our members and from our residents is where our public carts go. So again, that's kind of what I go back to, is that I would recommend that we go with the text unit, and basically have the control of the cart and then give them the option of the yardage, which would be a $72,000 cost.
Let me ask one question. Tanya, do we have any GPS in the tentative budget?
No, sir.
So this would be, so it's not in either, any option is in, okay.
Correct.
David, any more?
No, sir.
Okay, board.
Tanya, we had we set the $100,000 aside from what we had in for the golf cart, and so that if you want to, we want to look at a number to look at. That's the one we have to try to, I think, parallel. That option 2 tag test unit. See, we backed $100,000 out of the budget.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so if option two, if you look at it over a 4-year period, we got a good buy on the carts, $261,000, which allows us, I think, almost the ability to put that tag unit on there because if you look at the monthly fee of $12,720 and the $14,397 is a divisor of the total 71. You come up with $92,367 a year, which pretty much is a wash for the $100,000. Upside of that is those units can be used after the next fleet is. I'd love to have that screen unit, but I just don't think the additional money and the potential for advertisement is enough to warrant a $119,000 differential. I mean, so I'm looking at option 2 as something that's almost something that's not, we're not getting hurt one way or the other based upon what we had set aside previously.
I looked at it a little differently. I guess I was looking at the full screen unit and what's the benefits from having that and spending the extra money. Well, first of all, it sets Sun and Lake golf courses a way step above the competition. I mean, once people come here and they experience what we have to offer, I mean, I just ran into a new member that lives out at River Greens. He come here and he played golf and he said, my God, this golf course is fantastic. So he became a member here instead of at his own golf course. So to me, that there is a lot of benefits, long-term benefits for having that type of system on our golf carts. The other thing is, I went to a couple meetings with David, and I'm very confident that we can sell enough advertising here to pay the difference in terms of the cost. It also allows the visitors to order food and beverage on the course, which we don't offer now. I don't think any other golf course offers that. So that's going to increase our food profitability as well. And but the good thing about the full screen is it actually marks on the hole where you can drive and where you can't drive. And to me, that's very important because if a visitor drives into that restricted area, the cart will shut down. And if he looks at the screen, he knows he's where he shouldn't be. And you're definitely going to control the traffic on the golf course. The Tag 2 system, in my opinion, you have to mark the golf course to show people where they can go and where they can't go. And I'm not confident that our management people will keep the markings in place. So if they're not in place, a visitor is going to drive into a restricted area. His cart's going to shut down. He doesn't know why it happened. He's not going to read the text message that you're in a place that you're not supposed to be. And you're going to create a negative feeling about playing golf here. So with that said, and besides, just almost everybody has rangefinders, so the yardage readout to me is a benefit that doesn't help anyone. And so if you don't have that, then what's the sense of even tracking the golf courses? So I'm going to go all the way from full screen to nothing.
Comments?
Well, I've been for the full screen from the beginning for the same reason that Kurt is. The big thing is at least you can see the area that you don't want to go to. I looked out last night. I was sitting out on my back deck, And I presume high school kids was playing it last night. I don't know who was playing. I looked out to see one of the parents sitting dead center in the middle of the tee box on number 9, watching the kids. He was sitting in behind the kids where they were hitting, right in the middle of it. So I hollered out, like David did here 6 months ago, get off the tee box. And he apologized. But I still like that big unit. I think we can justify it with enough advertising. So that's my comment.
One more comment. I think you show $167,000 as the total price tag, but I believe that if we go with the big unit, the 10 tracking units are there no cost. Is that correct?
That is what the sales rep had told us would be the case.
Okay.
I did not want to put that on there. Just make sure that we had all our...
David, a couple of questions. If we put these units in, that's just for the public carts, and your proposal is it will save money by taking the rangers off the course. What happens to the member violations, which are not small in nature?
Members do drive where they're not supposed to on occasion. But what I would say is that we, while we will not hire rangers to be out on the golf course, we will, ranger from the golf shop. With the addition of Mike Lemire, there will be more of a presence of our assistant pros out there. Mike, Tim, and then Andy will be on the golf course as well. So there will be a presence. Obviously, we can't be present on every hole at every second, so there are going to be violations. And it's how we address them afterwards if we get those reports. And hopefully we can address those with the members. But again, I've been in this business a long time and dealt with members for a very long time, and they're going to drive where they're going to drive. So the nice thing about the system is that I can control the public, and the public won't drive there as well. Members usually police members very well. In the worst case,
but we have a lot more. We have what's a balanced member rounds and outside rounds now?
Member rounds are just a little bit higher. They're probably in the 37,000 range, and the public rounds are going to be, in the 35,000 range.
Well, the other point I wanted to make, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in talking to the sales rep for this system, I asked him about the aftermarket potential for these units if we decide they're not working, we want to get rid of them. He said there's practically no aftermarket for the larger units, but the smaller units there would be an aftermarket. Am I accurate in that?
But basically, he said that if we decided to get rid of the big unit, say, for example, we got through a year and it just didn't work out, that he would have to go out and sell that unit. And then it would be a fair market value at that point. So we're relying on two things. How much is it worth when we're done with it? And then on the second thing, can he even sell it to another golf club?
Okay, now again, you're recommending option number 2, is that correct?
That is correct, and I'll reiterate. I know that we can sell enough advertising this year. Without a doubt, I know that I can make up the difference between, if you broke it down 4 years like you did, Mr. Halbig, between year 1, I can make up that difference in advertising. It's my fear that year 2, 3, and 4, I might not be able to do that. And that is the main reason that I go, with option 2.
If we get these big units after a certain period of time, when we go to the next fleet, then all that upfront cost is gone. We got the cart. As long as we're paying the annual maintenance on this thing, as long as that company's in business, which is, you never know, it's a dart throw. Then, Kurt made a good point about visually being able to see where you can and cannot go. I think that's the biggest thing on these large units versus the small units, because the other portion of it, I mean, you can warn people and so on and so forth. Either one of them's got the management tools potential. Did you ever see a time where you might turn these things off? You know, you got some tournaments that I don't care, they're going to go where they want to go. You know, you got the Fireman's Tournament and you got the Sertoma. If we would get these things, would you ever see a point where you say, man, I don't want to deal with this, I'm just going to disconnect them all for this tournament? Will that ever happen?
There won't be a time that we do that for a golf tournament. There will be a time, like, for example, we've got the upcoming Crutchfield Hawkins, where, you know, we have to get all these high school kids out on the course, which a lot of members volunteer for. They have their carts, and the kids ride on their carts out to their holes, and then we also have to use our carts to get them out there. Well, at times, they won't travel on the tees or they won't travel on the greens, but they are going to have to go in areas that we may have restricted for one reason or the other, down a road or vice, you know, that type of thing, in a residential community for a quick route to get the kids out there. So in that case, I would say yes, we will have to turn them off for that. But for the Fireman Tournament, for the Sertoma, for all of those, no. All of those people are going to have to drive where they're allowed to drive.
Okay, I'm going to allow public comment. If there's any points anybody in the audience wants to make on this item, come up, please.
Jim Jennings, is this on?
Yeah, just
okay.
Be up next to it.
Get up closer to it.
Jim Jennings. I have a question. I did not understand. If these units shut the machine down when they're in a place where they're not supposed to be, how do you get them out?
The unit shuts the cart down for a period of time. So let's say it's in which the golf shop controls. We can shut it down for 5 seconds where it won't move, and then it'll start up again. Or we can go all the way to 10 seconds where they're sitting there for 10 seconds and can't move. So we can shut it down for a period of time, but it doesn't completely shut it down forever.
Well, how does that cart correct its position then? I mean, if it, as he says, if it just shuts down and the guy is saying what's going on, what happens? How do we get them right again?
Starts back up.
Well, it starts back up, but where? I mean, is it still...
It starts back up and gives you a amount of time to get out of the restricted area. So with the big unit, there would be a message on the screen. That message would show you have X amount of seconds to, reverse your course and get out of the marked area on the screen. With the smaller unit, it would buzz and there would be a text message that you're in a restricted area and that you would need to leave that area.
David, isn't there also a red zone that completely just shuts it off?
There is a geofence that you can put around your entire property to where that basically once a cart goes outside of that geofence, it will shut down. It will alert the golf shop and alert everyone that cart is going, down Sun Lake Boulevard to Florida Hospital where we're probably not supposed to be. So it will do that.
So I had one more question, and that is, if you're monitoring and that, are you going to be taking care of the slow play where you have people with slow play? Do you monitor this thing all the time?
It's up on a computer at all times behind the counter, and basically any violations pop up to where that, someone would notice it standing behind the counter, and then we could send someone out to handle those situations. It also monitors slow play. So it's almost like a stoplight. You got red, green, and yellow. So basically green, everything's good. Yellow, we probably should pay attention to it. Once it gets to red, we need to do something. So the policy will be for the golf shop staff, as we look at those and we see the violations that come through, or the pace of play, that we will get out and attend to those immediately.
David, explain to him about the blip on the screen where you visually see every cart out there, and you can see a gap, obvious gap in front of a group, or a stack up behind it. Every cart has a blip on that master screen.
The system is web-based, and it shows every cart, every public cart that's out on the golf course. And in that, I can see those gaps, and it also tells me if cart 34 is 5 minutes behind or 5 minutes ahead. So I get to see all of those things. It also tells me if cart 34 has driven somewhere it's not supposed to.
The last question I had was, is this going to require additional staff? Because right now, the staff is pretty minimal in there, and, half the time, not half the time, but quite a few times you can't get someone to the phone, or you can't do this, or when you call, it takes a long time before you can get a ranger out or anything like that. So I just was curious if it would require more staff.
It will not require any more staff. Basically, if we have issues using this system, if we have issues on the golf course, the golf professionals will be the ones that go out on the course versus a starter or a ranger. It will be Andy or Tim or Mike Lemire, or myself.
Just to be clear, David, we're in effect asking the members to police themselves. Is that correct?
We're asking that the members would follow the rules of not to drive where they're not supposed to. Don't drive on the greens. Don't drive on the tee boxes. Keep your carts away from areas you're not supposed to. And that we would ask for help from members to report that to the golf shop if we have an issue, and then we can the golf shop can address it properly.
And if they drive on the tees, you're dependent on somebody else to report that, right?
We are a member cart. That is correct, because I would not have a GPS unit on all the member carts.
I guess what I'm trying to emphasize is we don't have a ranger component anymore to address those issues.
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Pat Holmes, resident. It's more of a management tool, the way I understand it. Now, if I'm out there, or if I'm in a clubhouse and I look and I see that cart 34 is 2 holes behind, well, it doesn't show that there are resident people out there, members out there between that group and a group in front of them. So it shows you nothing there. And I have to agree with Kurt. How can we spend $76,000 to put these units on there for something that most people have their own GPSs, they have all their own equipment now. There are a few that don't have GPSs or rangefinders. And to make sure that you're going to have $76,000 in advertisement, I just don't. Maybe the first year we might have the $76,000, but after that, as it's been proven, it decreases off. And I think the amount of money that we're going to spend on this is not worthwhile.
Pat, are you suggesting we not do this, or?
Yes, I am.
Okay, just be clear. Any other comment? John? Oh, he's behind Larry.
Yes, sir.
John, we're going to take a position on this, one of these options. How does that work when we come to the tentative approval for the budget? Do we need to make an amendment before?
Let me ask a question first. Do you need to award the bid prior to October 12th?
No, the GPS can be installed anytime on the golf cart.
Okay, the reason I asked that question is if we brought it back at the next meeting, you would need a budget amendment to buy it because you can't award a bid without the appropriated funds. So if you want to buy one of the options, you can put it in the budget, the tentative budget that hopefully will be adopted at the next meeting. And we'd make the adjustments accordingly.
So we don't do that today.
Well, may I interrupt you? I would say today you are, in fact, adopting the tentative budget.
Right.
And if you wish to modify this tentative budget to include this item, you may do that. And then next time we'll bring back the permanent final budget adoption. And that would be
that was my
inclusive.
question.
Yes.
Go ahead, Rick.
I'd like to bring something up. Dave, we asked you at the last meeting which one you wanted, cart paths or GPSs, and what did you answer?
Cart paths.
So now you're bringing back that you want both. Okay? You know, there's only so much money in the till. And I'm sorry, but, you know, you got to make up your mind. It's one or the other, not both.
Well,
no, it's not just my opinion.
Okay.
One more thing I'd like to say.
A lot of people have their own GPSs out there. A lot of people. And a lot of guests that come in here, I see them with GPSs that use our club carts. They use the carts out of the barn. They have their own GPSs.
Oh, I agree with you. If that's what we're going to get, we don't need it.
That's right.
One thing I would like to point out is that the master panel tracks every golf cart on the course. And so if you have a cart that comes in that's damaged, and the guy says, well, that's the way it was when I got it, you can actually go show him where he ran into a tree or he ran into another golf cart. So you have control over damaged goods as well with this system.
Yeah, that is correct. And there's an example of that at Southern Dunes where they have this system. Guy came in, said the cart was damaged. It was like that when he got it. They went back and looked at everything, and they were able to show him where he ran into something and actually charged him for the damage.
Other comments?
No, I've got a question. There was a comment made that we're going to adopt a tentative budget today. Can we do that with this problem we got with this resolution or with the assessment?
Actually, this, in a way, addresses that issue, depending on what you approve, in that it appears that there's an additional $150,000 of revenue that would be coming in if you adopt the last year's rates, which could be either applied to this or applied to contingency or wherever the board elects to apply it. But the two could play hand in hand.
You only adopted one meeting.
What do you say?
he says we can. He says we can approve the tentative budget.
Okay, thank you, John.
Okay. I guess we can handle this with a vote by the board for one of the options or no options. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. What we're looking for is a vote saying door number 1, 2, or 3.
Pardon me?
Choose 1, 2, or 3, or none of the above.
Okay.
Okay.
Would this be for...
Well, I just assumed...
No, this is to direct us to which one to go with.
Rusty, get up, please. You've been here enough times that you know the procedure.
I'm giving you an opportunity to try to say something here. All right, could you do me a favor for a point of information? Could you read the approval of that section that you're referring to, John? Because you're making a valid point. I don't think he used the word tentative budget in there, and that was going to be I was going to talk to you about.
Oh, yeah, it's in here. It's very prominent.
Because I didn't remember hearing it.
It's here throughout the resolution. It's the same process we used last year.
We haven't gotten to that item yet.
That's the next budgetary item. This item is discussion of golf course GPS.
And Rusty, we still have public hearings ahead of us.
Okay. All right. I'll catch you there.
Okay.
But I guess my point is this: in response to Supervisor Halbig's question, the next action item is adoption of a tentative budget. The tentative budget has been developed. It could be modified prior to adoption, inclusive of these golf course matters, is what I'm trying to say to you. So, okay.
Thank you. Larry? Oh, okay. Well, let's do it this way. We're going to, first of all, vote on option number 3. That is the large GPS unit.
Supervisor Miller, there may be some confusion here too. I think staff's intention is to have this discussion and you give direction to staff as to which one of these 3 you prefer. At the next board meeting, we're actually going to have a resolution approving the adoption of the final budget.
I'm trying to get that without an informal. I'd like a vote so we have it recorded, okay?
Well, the word vote is what concerned me.
Well, how would you phrase it?
Well, I prefer the board's consensus on this so as to give direction to staff. And now you can do that through a vote. That's fine. You're seeking consensus.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to discuss option number 3. Okay? A yes will be your approval of option number 3. A no will be disapproval. Okay? So we start with option number 3. Allison?
Supervisor Hurlbert?
No.
Supervisor McCullough?
Yes.
Supervisor Halbig?
Well, I want one of them, but I'm trying to decide which one. There's a risk that I'm going to say option. I'm going to say yes.
Supervisor White?
Yes.
President Miller?
No.
There you go.
Option 3 is passed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, you got the numbers.
We'll prepare the resolution for option 3 and bring it back to the next board meeting, sir.
Well, wait a minute.
Okay, we go on item number D.
Which one? Okay.
Resolution 2014-09-1225. Resolution of Sun and Lake Improvement District to establish and adopt a tentative budget for fiscal year 2015 based on the estimate of revenues and expenditures from the district's funds. As long as we've indicated our approval of option number 3, the big units, then I suggest that we have an amendment accordingly in the budget. Do I hear any motion for that?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Allison, you want to record the intent of the board?
The motion as it stands right now is to adopt the tentative budget.
No, the motion is to include the cost for this option 3 GPS unit in the tentative budget. Am I on solid ground on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I need to know. Tanya, maybe you can
I need
help.
to know the cost.
Right.
Is this a lease?
No, it's a purchase.
The purchase?
It's $167.
$167,894, and the annual service fee is in addition to that?
Plus the service fees, yes.
Yeah. Plus service fees.
So doing is you're adding this to the budget. This plus that.
And it's 167 plus the 18,480.
Basically,
Okay.
at the next meeting, but what they basically
We're stuck with it.
is
I think we ought to take out the...
we're going to bring the balanced budget back in the next meeting for adoption. That all they're doing now is adding this to the expense line, and we'll make the adjustments for the adoption of the next meeting. Yeah, they need to add it now.
We passed the
I can do a budget amendment.
approval of the cart pass.
No, let's put it in the budget.
No, it's coming up.
I'm gonna make a motion to table.
All right, you need the price of the capital, and you need the
What that amounts to is about $15,000 a year more than the $100,000 we were paying anyway for carts. That's what it amounts to.
What's your O&M cost?
You roll it all up.
Target was to raise $22,000 a year in advertising, which would offset it.
Okay.
Why we have a Democratic It's in there.
Okay.
If we're challenged, we can say what we were talking about. I thought that was probably better.
I think it's probably better not to confidence like that.
Chinese wall.
They don't need the account number, just give them the amounts.
You can only, like
All right.
horse with blinders on it or something. You don't.
Are we there?
Yes.
Tell them what you're doing, Tanya.
In the tentative budget, we're going to add $167,894 for the purchase of the option 3 Tag Touch GPS. And then we're going to add an additional $6,240 to the total service fee. David has already built in $12,240 into his budget for the service fee, so we're going to add $6,240 to that number to get to a total service fee of $18,480.
Oh, the 12,000 is already in.
It's already in there.
I got it. Okay.
So what's our bottom line total?
170. It's two different accounts, right? One's capital and one's golf fund.
Correct.
Okay, you're increasing the golf fund by the 6,000 and some change, and you're increasing the capital account by 167. So it's in two places.
Total is $174,134.
What is that again? I'm sorry.
The total budget, amended budget amount is $174,134.
Okay, thank you. I need a motion to approve the tentative budget.
With as modified.
As modified, thank you. Do I have it? No.
So approved.
Second.
Okay, discussion from the board on any aspect of this tentative budget.
I got one question for Tanya. On the assessment maintenance fees, you have $3,390,000 in there. I know this year we've collected roughly $150,000 over your estimate, and that's really all that is your estimate, right?
It's my estimate, yes.
So should that number go up based on the fact that we're over collecting now, or is that already figured in?
We had a one-time back payment of a large property owner that is a lot of that amount. So I think her estimate's pretty much close. It's as close as we can get.
So basically you're saying it's included then?
Yeah.
But we should increase it based on
Right. We
the assessments being adopted at the current level that they are now. So we still should increase the $3,390,000 by $150,000.
Well, I understand that part, but I'm just saying over and above that, I think Mr. Wright yesterday told me that every year our assessment collection is better than our estimate.
Well, we have been,
so there's a trend there.
Yes, sir. We're always conservative in our estimates.
Okay.
And we would encourage you keeping that particular methodology. I'd rather overproduce than underproduce.
That's fine. Just ask a question, that's all.
Okay. Other comments? Whether it's utilities or whether it's general or whether it's golf.
I asked this question about the Miranda, the carry forward on the Marana Home Phase 2.
Yes.
This $108,000, and it was answered about the pumps. And will that take all that? I mean, all that $108,000 for that?
Pretty close, isn't it?
That's our
and
best
pipeline.
That's our best estimate. That'll be put out to bid, and that's the pump and pipeline. We won't know until we actually complete the permitting and put it out to bid. I would expect it's going to be very close, though.
Okay, but there's only there's one pump.
It'll be one
and a pipeline.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, I got one more. Just a silly little thing, but you got this sidearm boom mower for $35,000 that was in the budget. Is there a reason why you didn't buy it?
Oh, we did buy it.
We did buy it. That's in this year's budget, and the tractor is actually getting installed right now.
We're actually going to remove that from the cash carried forward.
Okay.
All right. So this $35,000 isn't in the new proposed budget then?
I carried it forward because I was understanding that it was not going to be purchased until...
The billing, if the billing doesn't come in for it.
Oh, okay. You got the product, you just haven't paid for it yet. All right.
Well, my concern is all these items that are being carried over, we're getting further and further behind on our execution of what we're proposing. We have the EMS facility, which is kind of out of our control, although I did talk to Greg Harris and Eric Stevens, and there is some movement on that. But we have entrance improvements, we have paving, we have maintenance yard, paving, the carts are okay. But then we have the drainage, we have the sidearm, as Kurt mentioned, we have water treatment plant. All this stuff is sliding over to the next budget year, and that's not the way this train is supposed to run.
Okay, the paving is being carried over because it won't be done in this fiscal year. The bid's been awarded, but they probably won't do the work till October. So that's why that's being carried forward. The maintenance yard paving it's a 2-year project. We didn't want to do the paving until we married it to the building. We want to do the building and then do the paving after the building goes up, and the building is in this upcoming budget. That's why that's being carried over. Golf carts we talked about. Veranda homes, that's part of...
Is that a permitting under Unit 4?
Yeah, that's been a permitting nightmare that we're hopefully getting. We hope to have out to bid in November?
It should be coming close. We've gone through. We've had to map 76 revisions to the initial water management district permit, and when a revision isn't a single sheet, it's often 40 to 50 sheets. When you put that entire line of thought together to arrive to where we are, you have to work backwards to make the modifications. It's a very complex procedure.
Yeah, I understand that, but if you take all this at face value, it appears that we're just biting off more than we can chew each year. And we're going to have to decide what we can do and what we can't do, because this kind of destroys the budgeting process, because we end up with 4, 5, 6 amendments, and then we go into the next year and so forth. Let me just suggest that we defer the cart path on Deer Run. We just put $200,000 extra into the golf budget. That can wait a year. That's my suggestion. I don't know about these others, but Greg, what's your assessment of how we get caught up and tackle this stuff?
I think one of the challenges that we've been faced with this year, the permitting for that north drainage project has taken probably 4 times longer than anyone would have anticipated. It's been much more complex. Once we're caught up on that project, which should be in the next few weeks, that'll open up Gator to do more work on the other projects. We will catch up pretty quick. Our anticipation and hope is to break ground in the maintenance yard, mid-December, and have that completed before the rainy season starts, because we have to do a lot of drainage work. Again, we've had several carryovers, but we've also had several modifications to some of those projects, especially that north drainage, as it's grown and evolved, and it's gone through probably 5 or 6 evolutions in the last year.
Well, a lot of this is our so-called capital improvement program. There's no reason we can't, if we recognize we have problems in terms of one fiscal year, to designate that as a multiple-year project and do a phase 1, phase 2, and so forth. But we the accounting system here is, we've got upwards of $1 million we're carrying over.
And that's a point well taken. We can address it. Another example, in the utility fund, we had $40,000 set aside for SCADA. We've also have the knowledge, and I know you're aware that in the upcoming budget year, we're going to have a couple $100,000 worth of blowers that go in. It didn't make sense to do the SCADA, then come back in and have to retrofit it to the new blowers. So instead, we're going to go in at one time and do the entire package. It'll save us some money on the backside, so that we're only addressing it once, and we're not having to retrofit. So we're trying to look at it from a complete package as we address it. Maybe we've done a poor job in communicating that back to you.
We need, I think, a more definitive roadmap in terms of what we can expect on accomplishments in any fiscal year, any budget year. So I would simply urge you to regroup and let's take this again. I'm making the proposal that we defer the cart path on Deer Run until next budget year.
I would anticipate we'll catch up with all the projects. The cart path on Deer Run doesn't really utilize a tremendous amount of staff time, or at least from my perspective, as a project that's largely subcontracted out. Well,
I'm just talking about what we have in the golf situation, where we just added almost $200,000. The point was made that we have a heavy subsidy to begin with, and I see nothing wrong with delaying the cart pass for 1 year so that we're not just
I agree.
Throwing a ton of money at it. I know you're not arguing with me.
I was just addressing it from a workload perspective. I'm fine with whatever decision you come up with.
Well, that would be my suggestion for budget. Others may have other suggestions. Do we have other comments on this?
I got one smaller item than the cart pass is this $22,500. I don't know if that was self-correcting. It seemed to me like last year that hole number 9 was wet. We've had a lot of rain this year, and I don't see the same effect this year as we had last year, unless I can't remember Can anybody remember why that was flooded or why it's not flooded this year? I don't think this year is drier. I mean, not as dry as it was last year.
Yeah, it's purely the mechanics behind, or the type of rainfalls that we had. Last year we had a lot of flash events where we would get 3 inches in an afternoon, and we'd get that over a period of 5 weeks, which caused a rapid saturation, and we didn't have the ability to shed that water quick enough. This year we get, at the most, I think we've had maybe a 2-inch a week at a high end. I mean, where we were getting 6, 7, 10 inches a week, we're getting enough rain this year to sustain it. So it's keeping the pond levels up, but we aren't getting the same volume of rain that we had last year. I would probably coin this as more of a normal rainfall year, as opposed to last year. It's probably an exception. The good thing is last year caught us up from our drought period.
We're adding one new position in your area.
Yes, we are. We'll be adding one position in the environmental realm, and that we'd like to start that.
At what level are we talking about, and what does that person bring in the way of expertise?
The person that we're looking at for that position will have a 4-year degree in agronomy and environmental sciences, and basically they'll be doing the conservation easement, environmental management, same herbicide applications that we're working through. So it'll complement what we've already started in terms of district-wide conservation and resource management.
Okay.
Back to this hole number 9.
Excuse me, if anybody wants to put their curtains down on their carts, they better do it right now.
I think it's too late.
Yeah. Back to hole number 9. If we don't take the cart pass out and you redo the cart pass along 9, will that make the situation worse or better, or what will happen to that?
We looked at it from a drainage perspective, in addressing what the concerns were last year. If we're not going to put a pond there, I would probably wait until we redid the paths. If we're going to delay that for a year, I would do it all at the same time, if it's just for the purpose of redoing the cart path.
Okay.
Other board comments?
I don't know. I'd like to see those cart paths be approved. We push them back and push them back. I know we just spent extra money. We probably would have.
I'm beginning to feel like we live in Doral Country Club.
Well, I don't know.
Well, that's my feeling.
Well, I know, but there's entrance improvements of $250,000 that are probably going to cost us $500,000 when we're through with it too. That's probably not as necessary.
Is that a justification for that?
Pardon?
I don't think that's a justification for cart paths, and I would question whether it's going to double on that.
You know, everybody's got their own ideas of it. It's okay for me to divert it to another year, but and maybe it should be. But I was the guy that pushed for pushing them back for 2 years ago. But
yeah, I know you were. I agreed with you. We didn't have this GPS thing came out of left field. Do you have something?
Yeah. I would like to go ahead and see the cart paths go in. I know we're spending an awful lot of money, but as long as we keep deferring them, all they're going to do is get more expensive every year. And I'd like to go ahead and see it. And at that time, we ought to have Turtle Run and Sun and Lake completed with everything we need to do on it for the next 4 or 5 years and major expenses.
Well, we keep saying that. And every year, there's another project out there. There's more expense, more golf carts, more GPSs, more cart paths, more overseeding. We got to have everything, you know. And every year, it's something else. We got to stop spending money. We got to stop spending money. We got to start cutting our expenses. And I think putting this cart paths back another year isn't going to hurt us one bit.
Okay, let's hear from the public. I'll say it again. Let's hear from the public.
You hire one employee, that's more than the cart paths advertising 20 years.
I don't know if this is the right time. Tom Costy, resident. This is not about cart pass. Is that specifically what public comment is about now? Is about the cart pass? About the budget in general.
Budget.
I have a question, and hopefully John can explain it to me. I would like to have a clear understanding of what a special benefit. How is that defined? And I'm thinking in terms of the retention pond that was put in over at the east end of Terega Street. I would like to understand what special benefit is, because I thought that money that's spent out of the general fund from maintenance, from the accumulation of maintenance assessments, were for maintenance and not for capital improvements.
It's not general fund.
And I thought, my understanding was that a capital improvement that is a special benefit, it has to be a special benefit to the property assessed. I've been over there and looked at, for instance, a benefit is being derived by folks on Terega, but the month after that retention pond went in, the lots on the street to the south of Terega, I think is Boston, the front yards were still underwater. So, but people in Deer Run Estates, the maintenance assessments that they paid for that retention pond, which is a new piece of capital. It's not a maintenance item.
I'll say this, Tom. One of the primary missions of the district is to work with drainage within the district. And there are many drainage control structures built throughout the district. When you build a drainage control structure within the district, it doesn't have to benefit, although it may very well benefit certain properties. It is for the district's requirement and mission is to benefit all the properties within the district, okay? So while they might do this project that benefits this area here and this project benefits another area, I think Mr. Griffin talked about a large drainage issue we're working on right now. The bottom line is it's the entire cost of the drainage is what gets assessed against all the properties. It's not this one benefited these two properties and this one benefited this property. So when it comes to drainage, things like that, that's one type of assessment. Compare that, for instance, to all the arterial roads in the district. All the properties benefit from that because everybody drives on those roads. Okay, so it's if you're trying to say this one should be allocated this way and this one should be allocated another way, that probably would not hold water. You need to.
How do you explain the fact that the people, the lot owners in Deer Run Estates, are being $3,900 is being collected from those people to pay for the drainage that was put into Deer Run Estates? But now the people that are living in Deer Run Estates who are paying those bonds, in many cases, those people are being asked to fund a drainage structure over in the Miranda area, where those people in the Miranda area did not put anything into the drainage structures that went into Deer Run Estates. We're still collecting those bonds, which were represented by drainage.
Tom, without looking at what you're suggesting, I mean, you're coming up to the podium and saying, okay, here's this legal issue. I haven't looked at any of the things you're talking about. I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't directly answer your question.
Tom,
I'll tell you
that's kind of a philosophical question. It's a little outside this particular budget situation.
I guess my question is, how do you define special benefit?
If properties are benefited, they're benefited. I mean, I'm not sure what you're saying.
I'm asking, how did the people in Deer Run Estates benefit from a new drainage structure?
I think you have to differentiate between what I'm thinking I'm hearing, which is if you had a specific bond assessment for specific benefits levied and the board found what those benefits were and levied the bond, then that property is assessed specifically for those benefits in the bond. That's an engineering determination and a board determination. If you're talking about a special project conducted by district staff within the district for general drainage stuff, that would be a capital expenditure typically, or something that goes in the general budget. It's a different thing from a specific bond assessment finding specific benefits to specific properties. It's just different.
What occurs in 1 year, for example, paving, the district as a whole pays for resurfacing.
Resurfacing is maintenance, and I understand that. This is a new structure, a new piece of capital.
Right. And it's a maintenance item to improve the drainage in that area. And by the way, it's not complete. That's only part of the project.
That's why I understand. That's why this will be a continuing question. And I'd like to have really a clear understanding of what a special benefit is with regard to capital improvements.
Okay.
Well, Tom, look, why don't we let John address that issue?
Okay. They used to, if questions like this came up, they would be taken down at the next meeting or thereafter. There would be an explanation.
That John address this issue.
One more point. This is not a general fund capital project.
Well,
it's not coming out of the assessment revenue.
No, but this, to me, this sort of bears on this whole assessment question, so I think it's fair game to address it. So, John, will you do so, please?
Next meeting.
John?
I will do that. I understood its question. What is special benefit? You'd like that clarified, Tom? I'm going to get with district staff and get them to clarify to me what the project is you're addressing. I will also come back and address for you what case law has determined to be as a special benefit.
Yeah. There is a resolution that was passed in a complete spreadsheet prepared by Polston with all when Unit 16 was improved with the continuation of the roads and with the drainage structures 4 or 5 years ago, and that's where those numbers came from that I mentioned to you. I think it was $3,900 per lot for drainage in Deer Run Estates.
Tom, we'll get to it.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public on this? Rusty?
5D, right?
Yes.
We're on D, yes.
Yes.
Where you been?
Make sure. All right, I have a question. Down there in the resolution, it says is to establish and adopt a tentative budget for the fiscal year 2015 based on estimated revenue and expenditures. Now, these estimated expenditures, have they been done already? These have been projected and everything like that?
Yeah.
And if they have, wouldn't it change in item 5A when you, up there in 5A, you said you're going to use the figures from last year's budget. So whatever estimates that you come up with would not pertain to your statement down there because it being a tentative budget.
Okay.
Now, we have very little difference on that.
And now my other question is, now since you're going to, it was mentioned about 152 for the 152,000 for the fire department that we used to have, how is it going to be reflected in your general fund? How is it going to be earmarked since we no longer have that item?
It's not earmarked, it's eliminated.
Is it going to be shown?
No,
with an asterisk?
Rusty,
Is it going to be earmarked or what?
Rusty, it drops out of the budget.
Okay, I just want to make
It's
sure.
not a line item.
I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what we've been debating, okay?
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rusty. Anybody else? Tanya?
Mr. Miller, you had an audience.
I
Had
what?
a person from the audience.
Oh, okay. Yeah, please come up. You were so polite, I didn't even notice you.
Carol Jones, and I'm a resident. I just wanted to clarify on this GPS that there is no additional staff at the pro shop to handle this computer. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a cost for the software to update the computer so they can watch these carts?
My understanding is that what we discussed in the way of cost is all inclusive.
That's all included?
Yes.
Just a comment, when I'm in the pro shop and there's one person behind the counter, there is no way they can watch that screen and check in outside players. I mean, it is so busy in there sometimes. I can't understand why you're not going to hire somebody else to watch this.
It won't be just on one computer. It's a web-based system, so basically any computer can pull it up. It's a website. Yeah, you just go and you have to have a username and log in, but it's a website that you log into and you can just see your golf course. So Andy in his office in the back would be able to see it. I would be able to have it on my computer at any time, plus right there at the counter. So, yes.
Are we going to increase the rates?
Step up to the mic, please.
Are we going to increase the rates for outside play? Because members aren't going to have any advantage to this, because they have their own carts. But is the cost of outside play going to increase?
Yes, ma'am. We increased the rates by $2 this year.
David, based upon the outside rounds, $2 amounts to how much money? Round figure.
Round figure, $75,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Tanya, keeping the card pass in, which I propose we don't, but keeping them in, factoring in the GPS decision plus the carrying costs, what is the net increase in this tentative budget?
Actually, there is no.
Well, we're going to be doing three things here. We're going to increase our revenues by $150,000 based on the conversation earlier, okay? The second item, we're going to add the GPS unit total cost, $174,134. So the net effect here is $24,134.
Reduce contingency.
And we're going to reduce contingency to balance.
And we're going to what?
reduce contingency to balance by $24,134.
But this $100,000 was also removed.
It was also removed, yes, because we're going to be purchasing those carts. So I removed the $100,000 and added $291,000.
Okay, any further comments from the board?
What's the actual balance?
Well, it's what
Are we still?
in front of you plus 24,000.
Are we still at $3,390,000?
No, that goes up to $3,450,000. 150 plus what's there. 3,540. Okay, 3,540,000.
3,540,000.
Yes, sir.
That's what it goes up to.
Yes, sir.
Are there any motions for amendment to the tentative budget?
Well,
There's a motion on the floor now to adopt the tentative budget with the modifications just discussed by Tanya with the golf carts.
Okay. I guess we get our oar in that.
Can we change it?
No, according to John, that's what we're voting on.
I didn't say you couldn't change it, sir. I said that's the motion on the floor that was under discussion and for public comment.
Okay.
As with any motion, there could be a motion for amendment if desired.
Okay, there you go. Did you want to make one?
Oh, I'd like to remove the cart pass from the budget.
I'll second that.
It's okay.
John, we vote on that?
After we have public discussion, yes, sir.
Okay. Public discussion on cart pass, the amendment. Back to the board. Allison, the vote will be then on the amendment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Supervisor McCullough?
The amendment is to remove the cart pass, right?
That's correct. That's all you're voting on. Supervisor Hubbock?
We're voting to...
You're voting on the motion to amend by removing the cart path.
A yes vote will remove the cart pass.
Correct.
Yes.
Supervisor White?
No.
Supervisor Hulbert?
Yes.
President Miller?
Yes.
Okay. Now we need to...
So now the discussion will come back to the motion as amended, which is adopting the tentative budget with the changes that Tanya mentioned, and now you've also removed the cart path project from it.
Yeah. Tanya, do we have a bottom line for that?
It won't change. Well,
it will change.
Yeah, it will change the budget, but it won't change the revenues lines because that's a capital reserve.
Correct. Revenue is going to increase by $150,000.
Yeah.
What we've just done is we're going to remove $275,000 in cart paths from the bottom line of the capital, which is on the general fund, page 10. We're going to remove that line item. Again, balancing the budget will be from contingency. So the changes we make today, the balancing number will be put into contingency.
Well, just so we know what ballpark we're in. Okay. We've had discussion, I believe, John, in this budget.
Yes, we have.
Are you ready for public?
So we're ready for a vote?
Well, do we have the public comment on the
Yes, we've had the public comment.
Okay, on not just the amendment, but now the motion as amended. Just to be careful, I'm sorry. I can't remember if you...
If the public can follow that, the public can comment.
Basically, just comment on the budget. It's proposed.
We're voting on the budget.
On the budget that's been amended.
Okay, we have no public comment. We're back to the board. Allison, you want to review what we're voting on, just so everybody knows?
What you're voting on right now is the approval of the tentative budget as presented. including the changes that Tanya had mentioned, which are?
Increasing assessment revenue, $150,000. Increasing capital for the purchase of the GPS, $174,134. Reducing capital by $275,000 in cart paths, and balancing to contingency.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Supervisor White?
Yes.
Supervisor Halbert?
No.
Supervisor McCullough?
Obviously, I don't understand.
Okay, let me explain it to you then again.
Because that vote just threw me.
I don't know what that was about either. We have a tentative budget.
Yeah.
We modified the tentative budget by adding the GPS units in for the golf cart.
Right.
We further modified the tentative budget by taking out the golf cart paths, okay? So there you have it. The net, that's what you're voting on.
Okay, so I would vote no then.
Supervisor
In other words,
Halbert?
I'm saying I don't like the amended budget the way it is, right?
Yes, you're saying that. Now, I want to understand something clearly. You've already had a separate vote on the golf cart paths, and you were defeated on that.
Right.
The irony here is with Supervisor Holbert voting no, and you voting no, and maybe Supervisor White voting no on that, you might have to revisit that.
Well, basically, by voting no, I'm saying I don't approve of the budget the way it is presented with the cart pass out.
That's correct.
Okay, can I change my vote in that too then?
Yeah, he started the vote. He did. Would you like to change your vote?
As he just described it, yes.
Okay, so the way that the roll call has gone thus far, Supervisor White has voted no, Supervisor Halbert has voted no, Supervisor McCullough has voted no, and the vote is now to you, Supervisor Halbig.
Do you understand where you are in this?
Yes. Doesn't matter that vote.
It doesn't make any difference. There's 3 no votes, right?
No.
President Miller?
I guess no, because we discussed it again. Now, so I'll entertain a motion for whatever you want to do on the budget. We've just disapproved the budget.
I'm confused.
Well, the issue, basically, as I understand it, is the 275. Is that right? You're against that? You're against that?
I'm for it.
Oh, you're for it?
For spending.
For spending it.
For spending it, yeah.
For the cart path.
I am for cart pass.
Okay.
And you're for it now.
I'm not for the cart pass.
Voted the other way.
Huh?
You just got 2
No.
Voted the other way?
No, wait a minute. Let me clarify that. I am for the cart paths. I'm not for the GPSs. Okay?
That point is moved.
Okay?
He can vote against
So,
the budget.
if we take the GPSs out of the budget and leave the cart paths in, I'll vote yes. Other than that, forget it.
Okay, well, we're past that point.
We can always bring these cart pass back and amend the budget. Let's just get this behind us. We can always bring the cart pass back and amend the budget.
Well, let's make a motion to approve the tentative budget with the cart pass in it.
With the cart pass in it, I'll make a motion that we approve the tentative. Can we back up, John, and revote?
I'll
make a motion that we
change your vote. New motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the tentative budget with the cart pass in it.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion from the board. Discussion from the floor. Back to the board. Take the vote.
Supervisor Halbert?
Yes.
Supervisor McCullough?
Yes.
Supervisor Halbig?
Yes.
Supervisor White?
Yes.
President Miller?
No.
Okay.
So that's carried. Okay, item E, landscape and signage discussion.
Yes, sir.
Well, I wasn't going to be able to
A couple of weeks ago, I sent you the 4 responses to the landscaping and signage requests for proposals. I asked that you review them and be prepared to discuss at this meeting what you would how you would like to proceed. And there are at least 3 options you can go. You have the obvious option, which you can reject them all and give us direction, or you can recommend we bring in at least 2 for oral presentations, or if you're satisfied with the responses, you can say, I want to authorize contract negotiations with X. Those are the 3 most obvious options. I guess there could be other ones, but those are the ones that are most obvious, and we'll be glad to entertain any questions you may have.
Well, let's start with a systematic comments from the board. Larry, do you want to start?
Yeah, I will.
On your opinion?
And looking at the proposals, this Don Bell has made a proposal and showed us some pretty good diagrams of what he can offer and basically priced them.
Which one now?
The Don Bell.
Yeah, okay.
The sign guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really like the looks of what he's presenting. It falls within our budget, as I can see it. The only thing that I might suggest changing in it, I think the sign for the district office or for what he calls town hall was a small wooden sign, and I could see changing that to a little bit larger concrete type sign, kind of in his general layout of what he's proposed and the rest of it. But basically redoing the 3 entrances, all these signage comes up to about $190,000 if I close to that, and then the budget for landscaping this is not a locked-in thing, I don't think, at this time, is it?
No.
But the
No, sir, no.
landscaping was about 39.
Nothing is, Larry.
Yeah.
Nothing is locked.
Okay. Keep in mind, the request for proposals was basically to produce bid-ready documents. This is not the final product you would see. Whoever you select will have to bring you back options and say, I recommend A, B, or C, and give you some options on signage. So this is just one particular company saying, this is what I would recommend at this time.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is this man has went a lot further than the rest of them in showing us what he can produce.
But listen to what Mr. Wright has said. The RFP is for the design of our systems, okay, with construction specifications, I guess you could call it that, with signage. Right. So what Bell has done is really jumped phase 1, and they're giving you a phase 2, which is not technically responsive to what we're talking about in the RFP. So we'll go from there. David?
Yeah, I looked at, there's a lot of stuff to look at here, and I can't believe this guy went through all this work on putting this thing together. I mean, he obviously went through a lot of work. This Don Bell, and to rank them, I would rank Don Bell 1 and this Barberon number 2. I guess what turned me off on the Tangram is all the blue. It reminds me of the clubhouse. He had all these blue signs, and I just don't like the blue signs. But anyway, actually, what we do get here is a pretty good idea of what this thing's going to cost in the end. I would like to see presentations done by both these guys. Now, you roll up the cost. It's going to be more than what we got set aside when all is said and done. But if we're going to do it, I think we need to look at least those 2 fellas, and that's my initial opinion.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Kurt?
Yeah, I'm in the same camp. I think Don Bell did a great job, and certainly presentations are well. There's a couple things I'd change, but that's not for us to decide right now. So I'd like to get a formal presentation from him, and maybe we could set the landscape portion aside and have just landscape proposals come in and just take the sign issue out of it. I don't know if that's possible or not, but
the RFP called for both.
I understand that, but I'm just saying what's good about this Don Bell, he is in the sign business. He's not a designer. He's not a contractor per se. This is his business, and if we hired another guy, they're just going to go to this guy and have him make the signs anyway. So we got a direct route here. I like his designs. I like his attitude. So that's kind of what I would do myself. But
no, I agree. His signage looks very nice, and I agree with both Dave and Kurt.
That it? Well, I have a little bit different take on that. First of all, we're asking for a professional analysis in a design context of what only our entrances, but our, as you would term, Wayfair signage system is, and the one that's the most responsive to that request in the RFP. We always have, there's a phase 1 and phase 2. The phase 1 is to present alternatives for what Sun and Lake might look like in terms of its signage. Bell, to me, has just jumped that first phase, and he's dealing strictly with sign after sign. He's parroting back. And I'm not saying he's not talented. I'm saying it was very interesting. They did put work into it, but so did Tangram and Harbinger. But Bell has gone all the way to a hard examples of what they want to do, and I don't think we're anywhere near what we want to do. What we want to do is hire a creative group to tell us or present concepts, and we make a decision, and then we bid the second phase of it. And that's where this Tangram, Pittman, Harbinger comes in. Now, Harbinger, as a member of that team, is also a sign company, but their role is better defined. With Bell, I think what you have is you have the hard sign estimates, and then you have this landscaping tacked onto it, and it's Avon Park, Edgewood Landscape. The question I would ask, have they worked together? The guy's throwing out all sorts of designs or concepts, and pretty expensive stuff. I think that's where Dave got concerned about the overall cost. So I didn't understand. Heartland Designs, this is this guy out of Lake Placid. He very wisely associated with Polson, but I consider basically the proposal non-responsive because we didn't get many ideas of their background and their experience and so forth. They didn't really, they listed past projects, but we didn't see any kind of good idea on that. So I would say that they're basically non-responsive. Barberon is basically a golf group. They do design and construction of golf courses. They have very little signage whatsoever in terms of what we're looking for. So while I think they're probably a talented group, they're really kind of outside of what we want to do. I would put, well, we have two different situations here. We have with with the Pittman Tangram Harvesting Group. They've been the most responsive to what our RFP asked for, and that was to give us a creative design with construction documents where Don Bell could bid on that and where Harvesting could bid on that. Then you have the other situation, again, very creative, a lot of work went in, and that's the Don Bell Group, but it's a hard signage situation. It does not talk about any of the golf course entrances or what we can do. For example, none of them, for example, said that, say, on the south entrance, we have one sign in the south entrance now, but we could have signs on both sides. We could have increased landscaping on both sides. There's no response there. So I think in terms of specific, where do we go next step, I would suggest that we talk to interview Tangram and interview Don Bell. I would pick those two to interview.
Mr. President, perhaps the best way to do that would be to call for a motion for the top two, and then...
Well, we may have further discussion, but then we'll... You guys, any further comment?
In order to get a better sense for what they do and whether our comfort level is, what is it going to cost us to go that next step, as Mr. Miller's talking? Anything? Is it going to cost us anything?
It should not cost us anything.
I mean,
what we would do is we would ask them to come to a board meeting, probably in October, and say, make your presentation.
Because I know in this Tangram thing, I looked at it, I didn't get the same sense that you did. Looking at there's a lot of references, but maybe I just didn't read it enough to get that sense of.
Well, I was in this business for many years, so I guess I had a comfort level that perhaps others didn't. But I have questions for them as well. For example, have they worked together before? I don't know. You got a firm out of Denver, and you got two Jacksonville firms. Yeah. And then the next question, I guess Tangram says they'll take the lead, but how does that work from a long-distance standpoint? And how are the other roles defined? And I don't think you can answer all these questions just from written material. And the same thing with Bell. I would ask Bell, have they worked together with this Avon Park group? And what role they have, and how do they handle this Phase 1 requirement where we have a concept plan for our whole system, and we're reviewing alternatives before we get into final approval, and then we bid. Then we bid the signs. And I get the feeling there they've just gone all the way through Phase 1, and so, yeah. I mean, I have enough questions of both of those groups that I'd like to see them here and be interviewed.
Yeah, and I'd like for them to have the ability to pretty much tell us what this whole package is going to cost, rather than, everybody's got an upfront cost other than Doug Bell rolled the whole thing together. And there's quite a variation in those costs, but if in other words, I wouldn't want to pay Tangram $67,500, and all of a sudden we get this package rolled up and it's going to be $700,000. So,
well, you
will they have the ability to come in and tell us pretty much what this whole thing's going to cost?
You really won't know the cost until you decide on what you want. What you're doing here is you're saying, firms, I want you to give me some options. You may tell them, this is the hard budget, give me options to the budget. Or you may give them an open-ended window and say, I want the most creative thing you can do, and then depending on what you select, the budget may change.
Well, when you hire consultants, it should be a process.
Right.
You should set the scope of their assignment, and then as that scope progresses, you can draw in or expand or whatever you want to do, and we can set a hard budget any time. But I'm looking for the creativity to begin with, to see what they have in mind for us as a community. And I haven't seen anything, for example, in the golf course entrances. And the one I worry most about, of course, is Turtle Run, where we have that little narrow entrance and nothing else. I'd like to hear their concepts regarding our entrances. For example, we have a mess out at Sun and Lake Boulevard. And one thing I should mention as a positive, I had discussion with Eric Stevens at the hospital, and he is very much on board with our signage proposal. So they're going to be a positive partner in terms of consideration there at Sun and Lake Boulevard. But what are we going to do with the south side of Sun and Lake Boulevard? Can we do anything? So I'm looking for some creativity to begin with, and we can always decide that, yeah, we can do this financially or we can't do it. So I'm looking to interview both of those groups.
Yeah, we need some creativity, especially at 27 and Sun Lakes Boulevard. At Schumacher and down at the north end, we've got some flexibility, but at 27 and Sun Lakes Boulevard, we need some real creativity.
Well, and then on the other side,
start all over.
If we just pick one to interview, then we have no benchmarks.
No, I say we need to have somebody. They have to look at what we've got before they can tell us what they can do.
Anybody want to make a motion? What we're going to do?
I have one more question here. On page 43 of this group that we're talking about, he's got expenses for showing up, it looks to me like.
Page 42.
42, I'm sorry. He's got flight, car rental, lodging, mileage.
Well,
and then on the next page, he's got the expenses of somebody. Well, what I'm asking, I guess, here is, will they come and present the thing at no cost, like you talked?
If they want the job, they will.
Okay.
Well, Larry, the normal consulting is, and these guys are very upfront. I was impressed with that because I've had to do the same thing for 30-some years. They're telling you what their rates are, and they're also telling you what their budget proposal is, and then they're saying if they go outside of that proposal, here are our rates, and their rates are reasonable. The other rates that I've seen in these proposals are reasonable. So a contract, as John will say, is exactly what we want it to be, should be in terms of what we set. We set the benchmarks for it.
Well, I'm all in favor of getting both of them here to present the thing if we can get them here without spending a bunch of money to do it.
Shouldn't have to spend anything, right?
That's right.
That's what I'm understanding.
Am I correct?
We don't spend it. I mean, they want the job. They'll come.
Okay, all right.
That's the way it works.
Well, I agree. I'll then agree with Supervisor Miller and on Don Bell and Tangram are the two that we look at. Unless somebody wants to complicate it and have more than the two.
Does that constitute a consensus of the board?
Yep, I'm in favor.
Yes. Okay.
I think in this case, sir, we actually need a motion, vote, public discussion, because you are actually taking official board action to narrow down the interviewees. So we consider what Supervisor Halving said as a motion and get a second on that.
All right.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we narrow the 4 candidates down to 2 to include Don Bell and also Pittman Graham Harbinger for interviews or proposals at the next or meeting in October.
I'll second that.
At no cost.
Give us flexibility on scheduling dates.
I was going to ask you what would a good schedule be on that?
I don't know until I talk to them.
Okay.
Well, from our standpoint.
I would think October.
Don't we have another public hearing?
Well, it'll actually be a presentation where they'll come in and
I'm talking about budget. We have other things to consider at the next meeting. Don't we have a public hearing?
Oh, yeah. The next meeting is your budget and assessment rate adoptions. So I suspect that'll be a fairly full meeting.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I don't think I'd get them here in time anyway.
All right. Second. Need a second?
We have a second.
We have a second. Okay. Allison, you want to take a vote on that?
To the public, sir.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Do we have public comment?
I'm Chad from Heartland Designs. I just had a couple, I tried to adhere to the spirit of the RFP when we were doing this, and that's fine. If you found my presentation inadequate, that's fine. I didn't want to approach the board with any preconceived notions of what you wanted without your input, is the reason I didn't show signs. And I was actually contacted by Mrs. Grubb about doing design work with them. I declined. I didn't want there to be a conflict of interest in the future, so I declined teaming up with them.
Mrs. Grubb is...
Don Bell.
Yes, the Bell Signs. They wanted to team up for me to do the landscape irrigation and lighting design work, and they do the sign portion. I believe she was under the impression it was actually bidding for the signs at the time, not that it was the design work. So that's why they had...
We jumped the gun on...
so I declined that. My only things I would caution on is when you have the design and the actual installation, it's the fox watching the hen house scenario. There's no third party to watch over the people installing, so corners can be cut. They're not going to turn themselves in for something that doesn't adhere to the construction documents. That's just one.
That's a good point. You were very heavy in irrigation.
I do a lot of landscape irrigation and lighting design in this part of the state.
Yeah, I just didn't get a feel. When I say you weren't responsive, I didn't get any kind of a feel for...
The signage makes up a smaller percentage of my overall scope of what I do.
Yeah, that's what
it's
I was
less than
getting
5%
at.
of what I typically do. So yes, you hit the nail on the head. Yes, it's a very small percentage of what I do on a design basis. The landscape irrigation and lighting portion, though, in the state of Florida, it's a title and practice state for landscape architects. They do need to have a landscape architect on board for your public type projects for the design work on that. They can't just throw it out.
I didn't get that from the proposal. Are you a licensed landscape architect?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It didn't come across. Excuse me.
But those are just my couple quick comments. However you proceed, it's your complete decision. But those are just the couple things of caution I have that don't let the fox watch the hen house on anything, and then make sure they do have a licensed landscape architect on board in their package, because if not, they're violating several Florida statutes.
Well, we appreciate your comments, and I also appreciate you coming today too.
Well, I'd like to make a comment to him that I think when we actually get in the process that we would separate the two, and we would have a sign company and then have a landscape proposal. To me, that makes the most sense. That instead of having,
you could do that. Yeah,
and plus watching over the hen house as well, we got our own general contractor on staff that obviously would be doing that as well. So I guess to encourage you to keep in touch that hopefully we'll have a landscape proposal as well.
Well, we need to do them in tandem, but we don't have to do them as a fixed team.
But that's what I'm saying, yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Bring it back to the board. Any final comments? Allison, you want to read the motion?
The motion that you have before you right now is to bring in Tangram Designs and Don Bell Designs to present for the board and provide points for questions of clarification.
Okay. Take the vote, then.
Supervisor Hulbert?
Yes.
Supervisor McCullough?
Yes.
Supervisor Halbig?
Yes.
Supervisor White?
Yes.
President Miller?
Yes. Okay. Item F now, and I know a few people have been very patient. Pebble Beach situation. Mike, you want to start that?
This is, in fact, the lady was here earlier that was actually the individual that was the beginning of this particular discussion. And so I would kind of reiterate, because I talked to her at length yesterday. This is a case where up on the east side of Pebble Beach, the lady's alarm went off in the middle of the night at the house, but it did not ring at the alarm company.
You say on the east side?
Yes, sir. This side of Pebble Beach. Yes. Because, you have a west and an east Pebble Beach that one day might be connected.
It's off of Woodland Iron.
Yes. Okay, the alarm went off at her house. It is an audible alarm. Her phone line was out is the reason the alarm went off. She eventually talked to the alarm company, and the alarm company says, "Do you want us to call the sheriff's office?" And she said yes. So the alarm company called the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office dispatched, I believe, 2 deputies to the scene. This is like 4 in the morning. And there was a problem with one of the deputies, or maybe both of the deputies, being unable to find the house. And this is the part I'm not real sure on. They may have gone to the other end of Pebble Beach as opposed to the east end. She said, according to her, and Allison talked to her as well, that they did go to the other end of Pebble Beach ahead of time. This was brought to the attention of the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office brought in the county's GIS person, and the GIS person basically sent us an email saying, "Do you want us to rename the west side of Pebble Beach to something else?" And she suggested Long Beach, or if we have a suggestion that's not being used somewhere else in the county, I think they would be receptive to that. She just simply made that as an option. And so I'm bringing it to you today for discussion. I was also asked by one board member is what would be the cost of connecting the missing segment of Pebble Beach so that you have a complete loop, if you will. And I asked the district engineer to give me a real preliminary cost, and that came to about $225,000 for the missing 2,000 feet. I'm not advocating we do that necessarily right now, but that's roughly what it would cost.
Mike, just out of curiosity, would impact fees figure into that cost?
I don't believe we have any transportation impact fees. We have water and sewer impact fees.
So there is water and sewer there.
It'll help with the water. Could help with the water and sewer. And the $225,000 was road construction only. It did not include utilities, but it did include some drainage work that would be necessary.
Well, Rex has left the building, but I just wonder why that was never connected in the first place.
You said there's water and sewer on the portion you'd have to pave?
No,
or there is
not water and sewer.
Okay,
that's
did not
factor that in. But you've got it at both ends, and to be honest with you, that would not be a very expensive process because of the low pressure lines.
Okay. So one side benefit of this is if we did do this, the assessment rates on those properties would go up.
Yes, it would. By the way, you do have one individual that owns a number of the lots that are on the golf course at the north end where there is no road, that has been a faithful assessment payer for a long time.
Mr. Hornig?
No. It's a group out of South Florida.
Oh, okay. They're paying on all that.
They're paying on a number of lots, what, a dozen or more? Yeah.
I don't think so.
This is the first case, at least from my standpoint, maybe others that we've had, isn't it?
All right, wait. One more bit of information I need to give you, and I confirmed this yesterday in talking with some emergency responders. Sheriff's Office. First of all emergency vehicles are dispatched from one location: fire, police, ambulance. The ambulances and the Sheriff's Office at this time have computer screens that bring up the maps that say this is where you need, this is where this property is, this is how you get there. Fire department vehicles countywide will be equipped with this in the next fiscal year. So you'll be able to sit in the cab of a vehicle and say, okay, I want to go to whatever the address is, and it will literally take you there. I think that as it was described to me as a flashing light or a flashing beacon to take you to where you're going. So I think in this particular case there may have been a dispatch issue as opposed to a GPS issue. But, you know, it is important that when people do get called that they dispatch the right units to the right place. Now, we had, if you remember, we had another incident about a year and a half ago where we had a heart attack on the golf course, and they dispatched an ambulance from Lake Placid to the Sun and Lake golf course of Lake Placid. And it took about 20 minutes to figure out the error of their ways. So you will occasionally have a human error that comes into play.
Seems to me renaming the street is kind of a knee-jerk reaction, isn't it?
It's not something you do lightly, having been through renaming of streets in other places. And if you ever put Pebble Beach through, which I think logically you would want to do at some point in time, then it will be even a worse problem when you just arbitrarily say, okay, Pebble Beach stops here and begins here. Now, I will tell you, when I worked in the city of Tallahassee, we had exactly that situation, and it was a pain in dispatching, and it led to a lot of confusion.
Can you change the name back?
Only the county can change the name, because
how many? Okay.
They dictate, they're the repository for names, and one of the big things they try to do is to prevent Pebble Beach and Lake Placid, Pebble Beach and Sebring, that type thing.
How many lots are in that?
I think I counted 30. I think
38.
38.
I want to remind you that all those people on the west end of Pebble Beach have got to change their driver's license, their credit cards, and everything else with an address. And that's quite a pain.
About 10 homes, I believe, maybe give or take one or two. But it will change the address of every property owner on that section.
If we went West Pebble Beach and East Pebble Beach, that would still be the same problem, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it would.
Yeah.
I say no.
Yeah.
I say no.
And
I can't
what
imagine.
I'm looking for today
I can
is
imagine
direction to write the county back and say, no, don't change it, or yes, change it, or whatever.
No. I say no.
I'm with you.
I'm with you.
As something, do we have anybody from Pebble Beach here? Would you like to make a comment? You're on the east side or the west side?
Carol Jones again. East Pebble Beach is a completely full street, and the West Pebble Beach, like you said, is about 10 homes, and they would have to change their addresses. It seems like there was one other incident a couple years ago with a fire truck.
There was.
And I was out in the street when that fire truck was going up and down our street, and he finally stopped a neighbor. It seems like it's a GPS issue, that the dispatcher doesn't tell them where West Pebble Beach is. It's not called West, but...
Actually, the communication system has greatly improved since that fire call of a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They have a completely new dispatch system that's pretty much up to date with what's available in the industry.
But if the dispatcher can tell them where Pebble Beach is, the 10 units there, that would solve the problem rather than spending more money to connect those streets, and there's no building out there right now. I mean, there's nothing.
That's because there's no street.
Well, no, there's a lot of the West Pebble Beach that is still undeveloped. Fire hydrants and everything is out there. If you drive down there...
But in the scheme of things, in the long range or short, or how you want to call it, it makes sense to connect that. Whether
I wouldn't think so at this time.
Or 5
There's a
years
lot
from
of
now.
buildable property out there right now before you start doing that. and I don't see the advantage to connect
We're
them.
not going to decide that issue today.
Mike, did you?
Thank you.
You say the sheriff cars are not equipped with the same?
No, sir, I said they were.
Well, they were.
Yes.
Okay.
Sheriff ambulance currently have.
But they still couldn't find this. They still couldn't find this.
I don't know if it was a dispatch issue, if they had the wrong number in the system.
Okay.
I don't know what happened. I have, but I think it was a human error.
Okay.
And I'm just having been in that business, knowing that the mistakes do happen from time to time.
I think we wait until it happens again.
Okay.
I don't think you have any support here for changing it at this time. Am I wrong?
No.
That do it?
Yes, sir, I got the direction of the board.
Okay. Go to item 6, which is an add-on item, which we do have one today, and I think that's Supervisor Halbig's.
I don't want to wear everybody out with this, but everyone got this. My favorite subject is Tanglewood. John, did you get a copy of this cover sheet that I put together on?
Allison's going to pass it to me.
On this
Thank you.
the Tanglewood issue.
Okay. I may have received this by email as well, I think so.
And my contention, we can go through this while you're reading it, is that we're providing benefits to all the residents in Tanglewood, and they're not paying for those benefits. Now, Tanglewood's assessment structure is based on unimproved acres. And I've looked at this. I looked at the Burton study, trying to figure out. I don't think the Burton study, when they were looking at unimproved acreage, took into account look and see what I had. What did I do with that? I had so many papers I can't figure out where I wrote certain things down. But anyway, when they did the study, they did the study on equivalent benefits. And I think their equivalent, Tanglewood's on an unimproved lot, equivalent benefit was 0.3, where an improved lot is 1, or a residential unit is 1. So I don't think they rolled all those costs into it. And what I'm proposing, what I'd like to see happen, there's somebody tell me why we can't do it, and I'll finally get off the subject, why we can't do a special assessment to every residential unit in Tanglewood and bill them for the benefits that we're providing, whether they use them or not. There's a lot of people in this district we're providing benefits for, and a lot of them use them, a lot of them do not, and there's always been contention about that. But the residents of Tanglewood, I believe, are getting benefits provided, and they're not paying for it. And I'd like to see something done, or get an opinion on whether we can or cannot do that based upon the information I've put together. And also, I would like to see a audit done, and I don't think it would take too much to do it, on consumption rates based upon the agreements we have with Tanglewood on their water and sewer consumption rates. Tanya searched the files trying to find a impact fee payment for the other 3 phases beyond the first phase, and we couldn't find anything, so we might have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in that. I know, John, the original agreement, 450 units, I think they paid $248,000 in impact fees for water and sewer. But the other 3 phases, phase 2, 3, and 4, we couldn't find any documents where any of that impact fee money was paid for any of that.
We don't have a record.
I don't know if any of the other board members are in agreement with this or disagree with it or have arguments one way or another, but I'd like to see some work done on whether or not we can, or if we can't, I'd like for somebody to tell me why.
I got no problem with researching it. The only problem I would have is if you're trying to charge them for a benefit, whether they use it or not. If you're a resident in Sun and Lake, the benefit is there and you can use it or you don't use it. At Tanglewood, they have the same benefits that we offer, and it's not like they have a need to use our benefits. It's just that they've got their own pool, they got their own tennis courts, they got their own pickleball courts, they got all the other stuff that we offer. So to try to charge them for that type of benefit, if that's the type of benefit you're talking about, to me it doesn't make any sense.
Well, then we don't need to be giving them residential rates on golf or pickleball, tennis, any of that.
I don't think we
community
are.
Center. Oh, yeah, we are. Oh, yeah, we are.
Okay, well then that should change.
Yeah.
Okay. The one difference is, and this is apparently the best we can tell, to help me, Ms. Canada, this was a decision, the assessment rate was decided, I think, based on some litigation.
No.
And I can't find any documentation as to why they chose what was chosen.
No, there was litigation after the assessment rate was established, right, because we tried to, the assessment, they tried to split their acreage into 3 parcels and actually triple their assessment. And that's where the litigation came from. And then we backed off and said, well, we're not going to pursue it any further.
Right, and I think out of that came this particular methodology that was implemented when 7, 8 years ago, whenever the particular litigation occurred. The only thing, the primary difference between Tanglewood and the rest of the district is they maintain their own infrastructure for roads and drainage. We do not do that.
Right.
So I think that's where the undeveloped land issue came up.
Exactly where it is.
Huh?
Exactly right.
And I think that's how I think that's why that was chosen. But it's the board's pleasure. And on the impact fees were paid, but we didn't have what was that, 7, 8 years ago? We don't have the detail.
It's been about a year or so since I've done that research. The research, but we know what impact fee revenue was brought in, but we don't have the details from whom. I mean, those records are 10, 15 years old. But we have done the research.
We still get water and sewage for
They pay same freight on water and sewer as anybody else.
What about those general meters they have over there? They don't pay on a per unit basis, do they?
They pay on individual mobile homes, and then there's a master meter that they pay for the RV park.
So they're paying the same way as somebody would over here?
We don't have a special Tanglewood rate.
John, we have a lease agreement with them as far as their entrance, is that right?
There is a lease agreement there. I'm not sure it's with the district. That was one that Mr. Dunty owned that easement, as I recall, at one time. I'd have to research that again, sir. It's been...
Well, I have it here.
Okay.
It's a 10-year agreement, and it was renewed, I think, in 2007, but not being a specialist in your area, it seems to me, however, that we could... It's our property that we're leasing to them.
If it's our property we're leasing to them, then you are correct. That's our property.
But that's
I've got some of it here, but could you just sort of...
Yes, I'll look at it.
Sprinkle?
Yes, sir.
On that. I guess what bothers me is it always seems like kind of a one-way street with these guys. Good example is managers never come to the meetings. The previous manager did. But the latest manager comes only when their assessment was affected. I mean, it's hard to consider them a full part of Sun and Lake because of that. So I'd like to know, just to satisfy myself, is what they're paying a fair share, because they do have a third of the residents of Sun and Lake over there.
Could someone also look at this consumption rate, because it calls for adjustments in for future phases in case they've got so many snowbirds it probably doesn't affect it. But I would like to have somebody look at that. It shouldn't take a whole lot of work to do it, because we do have an agreement in place that specifically calls out consumption rates for water and sewer, and if those are not what they should be, if they're more than what they agreed to, then there's a rate adjustment in order. I bet has anybody ever looked at any of these agreements?
Are you saying there's a separate water and sewer agreement?
No, I think it's
rate agreement.
Well,
I think it's impact fees, Tanya.
There is.
I think it really.
I've got one here if you want to. I've got all their agreements.
No. Yeah, but I think you're referring to impact fees and not consumption.
I'm talking about the agreement we have. The agreement we have.
Okay, what I'm looking at is what you've attached on page 3 and highlighted.
That's just part of it.
Right.
Just one page of it.
That speaks to impact fees.
Yeah, we've got a road drainage and utility service agreement with Tanglewood that was executed in 1966. Mr. Graytech was a very astute businessman, by the way.
96 on that.
Mike, you deal with this. You feel that we're perhaps undercharging in terms of their portion of percentage, or whatever you want to call it, Sun Lake? I mean...
Okay. From a utility standpoint, I think they're paying the same as any one of us that live here in the district. The impact fees, since they haven't added anything in a number of years, I don't know. I'd have to look at that. But from a consumption standpoint, I think they're in line. Impact fees, I'm not even sure it's an issue, because I believe they're pretty well built out.
Well, let me give you an example.
Okay.
A few years ago, and this was in connection with the county as well, there was a push, based on need, by the way, of extending Granada Road to 27 to give us another east-west outlet. And Mr. Graytech, who is no longer the owner, but he just shut us right down. He actually developed lots along Granada so that our right-of-way was gone. And that was a pretty one-sided effort in his part. And I guess what Mr. Halvick's getting at, and I, to some extent, share, it seems like we're always in that situation. We needed that extension to relieve a lot of stuff in Unit 2 and Unit 5 and so forth, and that's just shut us down.
Okay, I don't believe that was ever a dedicated right-of-way, because he couldn't have built in it unless the right-of-way was either abandoned or...
all I know is that it was proposed in the transportation plan, the traffic plan. It was adopted here, and it was shut right down.
Well, I don't think it's not in the county's long-range plan.
That was a
Not
buffer.
anymore, no.
Yeah. Well, that was actually a buffer between the mobile home park and other residential units, as required by county code. But the county did not support our putting that road in there. They would not take on Graytech in any way for that.
Well, nobody would.
Well, all I know is we have an original road drainage and utility service agreement executed in 1996, and we have an addendum to that executed in 1997. It calls out specifically what consumptions are, what impacts fees are, and everything else. And to say I think they do it. I want somebody to look at it to make sure that they're conforming to all those agreements and complying to it, and come back and say, yes, they are, or no, they're not.
We can do that.
And I'd also like to consider some way where we can capture some of this benefit that we're providing for everybody in Tanglewood, and if we can't, then you take the residential rates right off the table. And I mean, that's not going to affect that many people, but we should. Everybody in this district shouldn't be subsidizing that situation.
Respectfully, sir, once we do that, we do want to have our ducks in a row. If your board elects to proceed down that path, my strongest recommendation is you've got some expert behind you that says, yes, this works.
Right.
Well, we are agreed that we'll at least look at that situation. Is that correct?
Absolutely. With the utility issue, that's not a problem.
Okay.
You also have the option, you can ask the county to de-annex them.
To what?
De-annex them.
Yeah.
They also have the same option of going to the county and saying de-annex us.
Well, we'll just pass on by that comment. Okay.
The one thing that would do is you may lose assessment revenue, but you can increase utility revenue.
We can what?
Increase utility revenue. You can surcharge areas that are outside your governmental boundaries.
That's all we're getting out of now anyway.
Well, I think Supervisor McCullough had referred to it in the past, and that's taking a look at our utility rates. So I'm not suggesting we do that at this time, but that certainly, to me, is still on the table.
Remind me to get those utility agreements. We haven't done it, Danny.
Okay, we have no petitions and communications. Start with staff reports. John, you're up. What?
Janelle, why don't you update them on tomorrow? Hey, Greg.
Tennille Jory-Smith, Community Services Director. Tomorrow we are hosting our first 5K, meaning it's not a Sun and Lake event, but we're giving an organization opportunity to hold a 5K out here. And
which organization?
It's Edge Cheer Center.
What?
Edge Cheer Center.
Just what you do with your
Edge Cheer. They're a local gym that holds classes for cheerleading, competitive cheer, and gymnastics and that sort of thing.
Not a charity.
Well, it's a fundraiser for their gym. It's a fundraiser. And
they're a nonprofit group?
No, not a nonprofit group.
So they are for profit.
Well, yes, they're for profit. Yes. And we have, as of this morning, 330 runners coming out here. So it should, I've been heavily involved in planning this because I'm a little gun-shy about having another group come out here and making sure everything is in order to benefit the district in every way possible. So I will be here tomorrow making sure everything runs
How do you assess the benefits to the district from this particular event?
Well, just like, sponsoring a event of some sort, it's a goodwill way of getting Sun and Lake's name. It's going to be in the paper. It's another good story. Putting Sun and Lake's good name out there.
You probably bring in a lot of people who would not necessarily come here.
Yes, absolutely.
Otherwise, it's just exposure as much as anything.
No financial benefit then?
No.
Okay.
And I think it will directly relate. I know they are also going to be holding an event at the Island View in November. So,
okay.
Goes hand in hand.
That makes sense then.
Yeah. So.
Good.
Okay.
Can I, while you're up there?
Sure.
John's going to do that.
What?
Oh, okay, you can do it now.
Did you send this out?
No.
I did, and it's actually, we had already had them printed, but you can read it on the sign. That's the pixelation on that picture didn't come out the best. So the signs are very readable, and so.
All right.
Well, I was waiting till John gave his report to discuss this. Is this your language on the tennis court warning signs?
I think we do. I have to take credit for that. Yes, I'm sorry. Or as the case might be.
At the risk of encouraging your ire, I have a couple of questions on this. It seems like it's pretty harsh in the fact we said it's unsafe, but go ahead, as long as you sign up. The language to me is a little bit stark in terms of our position here. Are we really, let's see, district has determined that the tennis and pickleball courts are unsuitable for use due to the condition of the asphalt and refinished surface.
I believe that was exactly what your staff represented at the last meeting.
Doesn't that place us in a rather compromising position if anybody goes in that court for any reason?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but at the last meeting, what we said was, staff said, we want to close these courts. They're unsuitable for use. Potential for injury exists. And the pickleball and tennis court people said, oh, no, we don't mind that. We'll dance all around that. We'll play in the courts. Just let us play. Yeah. Okay? That's exactly what happened. And so, in my opinion, that language it tracks exactly what was stated at the board meeting.
One thing I want to do next week is meet with each of you individually and take you out to the courts and show you the individual issues again as they continue to worsen. But we'll address that more at that time if you're willing. But there is some inherent hazard. The courts that are currently in play, not as much. But the two courts that were out of play, we were asked to look at bringing those back into play. One of the two, it is possible. The other one, I would strongly discourage it because of the condition it's in. So we could theoretically get up to 3 playable, moderately functional tennis courts. But again, I'd like to meet with you on an individual basis to take you out and show you so that you can see where the risk lies firsthand. Because pictures just don't do it its worth.
My concern is when someone is chasing down a tennis ball, they're not looking to see where the court indentation is, and their mind is thinking level, and their foot catches something that's lifted up an inch or so, and there are areas out there where that's exactly what the situation is. They could easily trip and hurt themselves.
Well, I was out a couple of weeks ago. I didn't see any areas lifting up.
Again, addressing the 2 courts that are closed.
There are on the other 6.
On the other courts, so far, we've only got one area that's somewhat suspect, and we're going to try to inject some epoxy into it to keep it from rising at this point. That was on court 8 on the pickleball court. So as these courts, we don't know what they're going to do over the next 6 months, how they're going to function. And at the request of the pickleball and tennis folks, we're trying to limp through it.
Shut them down. Do you have any issues? People coming in to sign the waivers?
The signs are just being put up today or tomorrow. So I would suspect that once the signs are put up, that they will start coming in to sign.
But everybody that plays signs the waiver, don't they?
Well, everyone that plays signs the original waiver put out, and then everyone who has memberships will come in and sign, or gets daily passes or 10 play passes, will sign the additional waiver as well.
I was out on the courts again this morning doing a brief inspection before the meeting, and 2 of the gentlemen that were over there playing, they were asking what I was doing on one of the courts that we had closed, and they had no qualms whatsoever about signing the waiver. They're completely willing. They were completely willing to do so, and they understand. They have a very clear understanding of the risk the district is taking by leaving them open, but they also, it's trumped by their desire to have a place to play.
I want to mention an attorney that lived in the district told me one time. He said, this disclaimer that the golf course has you sign, sign it, don't make any difference, you get hurt, you still sue.
Well, the decision the board wanted to make, though, was to keep it open to accommodate. That was not my recommendation.
That's the point I'm trying to make, John. I mean, I agree with the warning, but you can have them just sign disclaimers. If they get hurt, all bets are off.
It can't hurt, though. If we're going to let them play, it can't hurt. I'll say that.
Well, what's the case law on this? I mean, we have this sign.
The sign is, the case law is you can't waive negligence. In other words, you can't say, okay, we're all going to go on this field trip down here today, and you got to sign this waiver. Well, everybody gets on the bus driver falls asleep, hits something, and everybody's hurt or whatever. Sorry, that was negligence on their part. The waiver would not apply. On the other hand, something like this, in my opinion, where we say, look, there's a known defective condition. Your desire to play, despite this condition, says, I'll go ahead and accept the risk. I'm going to be there. I want to play. To me, it does offer a measure of protection to the district. Okay. It's a different thing from waiver of negligence. This is acceptance of the risk, which is a different legal concept.
Okay.
And that's why it's worded as strongly as it is, because that gives us the most protection, sir.
Okay.
What?
Moving right along?
Well, we're getting ready for Greg, I guess.
I asked Greg to update you quickly on what we're doing on Turtle, because we've had some questions about the conservation areas.
Just a brief update. As you are aware, 2 months ago we unexpectedly lost our spray tech that was managing all of our conservation easements. He left. We have since hired a person. They actually started today. To help that person catch up, we brought a work crew in. We've got funds, and this is what I do at the end of every budget year when I've got funds in the environmental sector. I'll bring in a work crew to help expire those funds. We are hand working all those areas to get it caught up. That'll be done in the next day or so, and then we're going to move on over onto the portions of the backside of Turtle Run, because we've had a request, and we were working them hole by hole in order. We've had a request from homeowners if we could get in there and clear out behind their houses. So we're going to, as soon as we finish doing the handwork to catch up, I'm going to move that work crew over to 16. We're going to do 16, 17, and what's left of 18, and most of it by hand.
Are you cutting any more trees?
Certain species, yes. Oak trees, we hope to leave in place. Longleaf pines, the one that have the long or slash pines, we hope to leave those in place. Any of these sand pines or short needle pines, we will be removing because they're not native to the habitat.
What exactly now is the division of labor between your people and the Billy Casper people with regards to who does what where?
We are responsible and manage. We manage ponds and pond banks right up to the turf line. We manage all the conservation easement and conservation areas. Turf grass and the bahia grass that they've put in. That's responsibility of the golf course. So that's kind of the dividing line. Red stakes, white stakes, yellow stakes. One side's theirs, the other side's ours. I'm glad you brought up ponds. It reminded me of a question I was going to ask you. The pond on number 5, or the retention pond on number 5, this doesn't seem to clear up. Number 5 on Turtle? On Turtle. Understand, this is the first... ponds and lakes go through cycles. This is the first cycle that pond has seen unimpeded in probably 15 or 20 years since it was dug. For the last 10 years, it was completely covered. In other words, was getting zero daylight because of the vegetation that was in there. We went and removed it. That, coupled with a copious amount of rainfall, nitrates, phosphates, and everything else that's added from the golf course, plus what's naturally occurring in the environment, causes a lot of these ponds. And you'll see it. These ponds will cycle. They'll blow up with algae. We'll go and we'll treat them. It'll go away, and then it'll come back. It's basically the first year that pond's cycling through. If you go look at it today, it looks a world better than it did 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago it was orange. Today it's
an evolution. It just happens.
Exactly, yeah. And when we get into the winter months, you'll see all of them really clear up. They'll look nice. And what it is, it's just like plants. It's the growing season for algae. The majority of what is in there is suspended planktonic algae. It's a very fine microscopic single cellular organism that basically proliferates in the warmer months. Add to it the nutrients necessary, and they have a big old party, and everything changes colors.
Speak to the pond by the putting green and driving range, the issues you've had with that, and why you're doing what you're doing.
The putting green, right between the putting green and the driving range, we've had a tremendous blow up of filamentous algae in spite of the fountain being in that pond. We actually went in before the Sertoma and some of the other tournaments with dip nets from a pool and pulled it out because I'm limited on my dosing of chemical. I can't go in and pour copper, which is our primary mechanism for managing. That's actually filamentous algae. I can't go in and dump 50 gallons of copper in there without causing long-term damage. They also don't like us using extensive amount of copper because the half-life of copper is extremely long. So we have to limit our applications to kind of complement those applications. We are doing handwork to remove some of that algae. You're going to see it blow up and go down. It's part of summer months in small contained pond systems. The bigger the system, the more water that flows through it. The lake back here, Lake Granada is a good example. Spring-fed lake gets a lot of water cycling in. You'll never see an algal buildup on it. A lot of the ponds on the golf course are self-contained, or they're part of a system that's constantly getting dosed by nitrates through rainfall and irrigation. So it's just a constant battle through the summer months.
Okay, thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
General Counsel?
Yes, sir. I have two things. The first is in the Severino case, we recently got in some requests for discovery from Mr. Roper to the Sheriff's Department for a lot of the investigatory background stuff, and so that continues to shape up. The only other thing I want to talk about, I think it would be, I don't think all the board members have seen it. I know that you have, sir, the Welch Tennis Agreement. I just want to talk about that very briefly. And number one, the issue here, as directed by staff, was to develop an agreement, and the agreement that we developed, I asked Greg to look over and approve, which he's done, and we sent that off to Welch. We sent it to them because my opinion was we needed to have them sign it first before we sent it back to the board for the board signature. I think it would be appropriate to have them sign it first. Within that agreement, basically what it says is the district will cause the asphalt to be put in, and Welch will do the surface coatings. As you might recall, Welch has agreed to coat all the tennis surfaces at no additional cost. We're holding back the retainage of $18,000 for this project. They won't get paid that until the whole project is done and accepted. The asphalt base, we have a separate contractor to put the asphalt base in, and then Welch is putting in the surfacing. And so the agreement basically says that Welch will be held harmless from anything to do with the asphalt part. And that was their negotiating position, that, look, we're not responsible for the base. That's what got us here in the first place. That's why we have this problem. You guys put in the base, we'll do the top. So I suppose there is an element of concern about what happens if the courts again fail. Now what do we do? Because we've agreed to hold Welch harmless for the asphalt base. And I think the answer is that if the courts fail, and we can't, again, determine who's at fault or what the problem is, we do have a contractor who put in the asphalt base, and we have a contractor who's put in the surface. So we can sue them both. While the district has agreed to hold Welch harmless for any of the asphalt base part, that doesn't mean that when we sue the asphalt contractor, they have held Welch harmless. They have not. So basically what happens is there's an impleader case, and the base contract guy says, okay, I'm impleading the surface guy, and we'll attribute percentages of fault to whatever. But from the district's perspective, we have a remedy against both the warranty of the surface coats as well as the asphalt construction base. So the fact that the district is holding Welch harmless under the agreement with Welch for settlement to how we're going to globally address this issue, I don't think is going to affect the district's potential remedies in terms of what happens if something yet again is problematic, which I also think is very unlikely, but nonetheless things like this do happen.
John, what I don't understand is you sent it to Welsh before the board has seen it, and you've removed us from any comments on that. It'd be after the fact. If they sign it and they bring back an agreement, any questions, and I had a question,
Yes, right.
You and I are at cross purposes over that. We don't have a chance to comment. I asked what I thought was a fair question, and I find out it's already been sent. So where's the board's role in this? This is a big agreement. This is a lot of money at stake here. And I think the board should have had a chance to look at that before it went out to anybody else.
I was trying to protect the board by having Welch sign it first and then send it to you. And I understand your point.
That removes us from any chance of
input prior to Welch getting it, is what you're saying.
Well, sure.
So, in retrospect,
you do that 99% of the time. You make sure that we see something before you send it out. And I had what I thought was a fair question.
I agree. I tried to address it.
You certainly took offense to my comment, and my comment was, "Well, it's too late now. It's gone." You didn't like that. Well, that's how I felt, because none of these guys had a chance to see any of the wording in there. That's what we're here for.
Point well taken is all I can say. I can't go beyond that, sir.
I'll leave it at that. You must have gotten up on the wrong side of the bed in the morning or something.
I won't deny that could have happened. It's been a very stressful week. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, these meetings aren't helping any either, are they?
Well, at any rate, that
you have anything else?
That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Okay. No progress on any of the litigation issues?
That's for next meeting. As I understand it, anytime we have 2 meetings a month, I'm to bring the reports on the second meeting.
Correct.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
You ready for me?
Yeah.
I'll be brief. We're $142,000 ahead of our budget on collection of O&M assessments, which is good. We have another month to go, and I think we could easily add another $25,000, $30,000 to that number, although Ms. Canaday is probably choking right now at the idea of me saying that. But she does a very good job at going after the ones that do owe us money that we've targeted. Mosquito spraying, I have had no complaints this year. Have y'all had any? I mean, it's one of those programs that as much water as we've had, I think Mr. Griffin and his folks are doing an excellent job of keeping them knocked down, because we're getting 0 complaints, and we used to get just killed this time of year with mosquito calls.
When Greg first got here, weren't we throwing pills in?
Yeah, and let me explain. Each tablet covers about 100 square feet, 10 by 10.
We're doing that still, not spraying?
Well, we are.
We are. Go ahead.
When I first got here, they had sporadically on request provided dunks, which are a larvicide. The 2 modes of action that we use for mosquito control, one is larvicides, one is adulticides. Larvicides, you actually treat the water body in which they're laying in. If they're in storm drains, you go and you throw a dunk in the storm drain, or it's a little cube that you basically toss in there. It has an active larvicide that kills and actually genetically alters the larvae of the mosquito. The other thing we do is the ultra low volume fogging, which is, you'll see the truck or the gator riding around shooting out basically a permethrin fog that, I don't know if y'all remember, when I was younger, I used to try to drive through it on my bicycle, but that flows through the neighborhood and basically kills the majority of adult mosquitoes. When I got here, we didn't have an active mosquito program. They would respond to the occasional complaint, but we didn't have any mechanism nor licensure to perform the task at hand.
Are we now spraying?
Oh, yes. We spray typically 5 days of work.
That's all I wanted to know. More than I needed to know.
Anyway, I just wanted to, that's one of those little quiet programs that we put in a couple of years ago that seems to be working well. And at the last meeting, I told you there was a pending sale of the 33 vacant lots in Magnolia. Closed on Monday or Tuesday, John?
I think last week.
Mr. Hornick now owns 33 lots in Magnolia, and we hope he begins building homes fairly quick.
That'll be very interesting to see how that unfolds. Also, his property on the corner of Sunrise and Sun Lake Boulevard. But getting back to the spraying, you're right. I've heard no. Has anybody heard any comments about that? So it's whatever you're doing is working.
Yeah, I see him every once in a while go through my neighborhood, fogging.
Mm-hmm. Try to do it around sunset and dawn, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What else, Mike?
That's all I have for today.
Okay. Unfinished business, only Tanglewood. New business, committee reports, public comments. Public comments. We almost got by on that one.
Just a quick question. I wonder, we said Hornick bought those lots over in Magnolia?
Yes, he did.
I wonder if he's going to pay the $234,000 he owes on all the other stuff. Where do we stand there? Is he going to pay?
I think he pays it. If he sells a lot, he pays it before he sells a lot. You know,
is he going to pay the assessment?
No, he pays the assessments. If he gets a buyer over there, he's going to pay the assessment on that lot.
I think what he's talking about is Unit 16 lots. He owns a number of lots in there that
Yours is $234,000.
It's primarily money owed to the bondholders for the most part, and he is not paying that. And
what makes you think he's going to pay the assessment on the 38 little lots he already bought?
This guy's very selective in what he does and doesn't do, and trust me, whatever he doesn't do is a business decision as much as what he does do.
Right.
So.
Exactly. Foreclosed on the 2 lots by me, so.
Well, it could be. Thank you, Art.
Yeah, he'll only pay it if he builds on it.
Okay. Any final comments, shots, arrows, slings from the board? Okay. We are done.